what I'm seeing already in the data, that most of the performance enhancing effects come from better recovery, including better sleep. And if you think that through, and again, nobody has ever proven it. By the way, a lot of athletes who tell you that that's what they feel, they're not getting bigger, they don't want to get bigger, but they can train more, is like, but nobody has ever put that in a, again, scientifically accepted gold standard data set. But if we prove that, and that's the fact, I can tell you, all these athletes who are enhancing, I would really very vaguely say more than 50% of their improvements comes from better recovery, better sleep. If this is the case, I think, and that's my plan for the second half when we release the data, is I not just can start, but I think it's the right thing to start, morally right thing, the discussion. Is it actually morally okay to not allow performance enhancing drugs for everybody in sport? Because these people, they pick a horrible job if you look at damage to their body. Being an Olympian athlete, being an NFL player, being like, all of this is like a drag, and it's pain and destruction for your body. Or talk to a Cirque du Soleil artist or whatever. There's many reasons why they all retire in their early 30s.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually beyond just performance in athletics too, right? You can generalize this to stuff like construction or other blue collar labor, where you have people
Like
who they
100%.
age out of they age out of this because they just destroy their body over like 40
Yes.
years.
So, and that is, by the way, a fact, by the way, nobody wants to talk about. It's one of the most if I always think, oh my God, if people would use the same amount of passion they're hating on enhanced games for actually highlighting how risky people are obviously allowed to do their job choice, but like, it's a very, very, very risky or very destructive one. So, and if we show that actually performance, and we're going to show that because I see it, that performance enhancing drugs actually unfold their potential mostly by repairing the damage better, which they're doing, I think the moral consequence will be not allowing performance enhancing drugs is actually very bad. It's literally like somebody in the old days, you would say, oh, you're a coal miner. And what we would say is like, you're at higher risk of lung cancer. So please do your screenings and whatever. And instead we would say, no, you are at high risk of lung cancer, but I don't want to talk about it. You're not going to go to a screening.
Masks are banned and you can't wear any helmets, right?
Yes, exactly.
Enjoy your mining.
And that is what we're doing at all these sports. They damning their sports, their heroes to deliberate damage. And nobody wants to talk about that. And they got away with it because nobody had the data.
Welcome to another episode of the Plausibly Deniable experience. We're very proud today to have a very fun guest. Christian, do you want to introduce yourself very briefly?
Okay, very briefly. First of all, thanks for having me. My name is Christian Angermeyer. How would I describe me? I'm an entrepreneur and investor. I like interesting things. I like to be curious. And once in a while, I think I'm starting pretty cool companies. At least I think they're cool.
Yeah, we think they're very cool. That's why you're on. Quick shout out to sponsors. Thank you to Polymarket, Zcash, Passage Press, and Citizen X for sponsoring.
Before we jump in, Christian's most recent venture is the Enhanced Games, which is similar to the Olympics, except instead of banning athletes from using performance-enhancing drugs, athletes are required to use performance-enhancing drugs. But Christian's done a bunch of other really interesting stuff too, like forming and selling an African banking conglomerate for hundreds of millions of dollars. And we do touch on that later in the episode, but for now, on to the super soldiers. Especially with PEDs, it gets really tricky because you have like the performance enhancing cocktails that athletes use are basically things that have never been studied before, right? Like we might know what happens when you do like testosterone individually or testosterone with some like oral steroid or something, but then it's like you start pumping a bunch of these other things together and it's like you kind of just have to do blood work on the person and hope that you're not f***ing them up.
Well, but I swear, like, because we didn't rehearse the call, it's the perfect question because that's what we actually want to do with Enhanced Games. So before I come to your point, like, just want to, everybody who doesn't know, who's listening, sort of
tell us what Enhanced Games
is.
Let's
so
start
excited
maybe with the games, and then we'll go into the rest of it.
This episode will air before, like, on May 24th, we have the first Enhanced Games. We're building this global sports franchise. It's going to be much more than a single event. It's going to be every year. We're going to have monthly event, whatever. But
sorry, let me interrupt you there. It's going to be very cool. If you can go, you should go. It's going to be like going to the first Olympics ever. You get aura forever. Okay, we're going to be there. We're going to have a lot of friends there. You should go. You're a huge loser if you don't.
He's
You know,
saying,
if you're not invited, you're the biggest loser ever.
but
It's
like
all
I
the
have to
hottest
say,
people on earth.
I have to say because I want to make it more positive because you're not a loser because like tickets are not for sale, but you could text me or whatever. Like it's like an
He's
invite.
calling you so much of a loser that he's saying you can't even get the ticket. That's how much of a loser he's calling you. He's saying
True
like
No, I
you're not a
say the
loser if you can't
opposite. I'm
come
saying like
because you're not even invited. Okay,
just
that's where
right.
we're at right
That
now.
is not what I said. So uh, if we don't know each other, we should know each other if you want to go. And if not, watch it because it's going to be live streamed on various platforms. But like the premise of the enhanced games is performance enhancing drugs, medical ones. That's super important. Like FDA, fully FDA approved drugs. Yeah, if you do it with a doctor together, probably get
Tell
it
us
from.
how the idea started, and then tell us what the games are, because I'm sure there's some interesting story here, right?
Yeah, but I want to then come back what Lucas said
Yes, into the testing. You have the three branches of the company.
because like so first of all, we only allow again already fully medically approved, nothing in trials, but are fully medically approved performance enhancing drugs. But additionally, because there is so much bullshit out there and so much urban legends, oh, this is bad and blah blah blah, and I really get angry because like it's all like it's a mixture of not knowing. It's a mixture of obviously some parties want to paint us like crazy, whatever. But like, in order to leave all of that urban legends behind, we actually structured our training camp where all the 50 athletes are training like a gold standard, proper clinical trial, uh, government oversight, big universities involved. And it's gonna be the first very big comprehensive data set we're gonna release after the games of performance
Oh,
enhancing drugs. Yeah, whatever. So if there are questions, hopefully we contribute to at least answering some of them. Because again, I'm a fan of data and of scientific rigor. Yeah, and that's what we're gonna do. So they already approved, but like we wanna show or we
Yeah,
wanna.
you want to hold yourself to the highest standard possible, and really make sure you're adhering and going above and beyond. So
well,
so
so
tell
after
us.
so after the enhanced games, then the internet biohackers are going to be going nuts. They're getting like a massive data dump on all these compounds that they've
Yeah,
never seen
Barry, they're
used in.
gonna love us. They're gonna love us
Oh,
because like again, I think
I'm
by
gonna
the way,
like this is me. I'm referring to myself. Like this is gonna be awesome.
there are people saying that. Like I don't want to name the other person, but it's one of these famous looksmaxer who said in like an interview, "Oh, I'm like doing math like to be more lean." Yeah, it's scientific bullshit. Yeah, because if we want to give the medical answer, there are medical things you can get in your pharmacy who give you exactly the same with much less downside, and you get it in a clean way, whatever. So it's dumb to do it, yeah, but also it's giving all of that a very bad rap, and it shouldn't have that because I much I so much believe in that sort of topic of positive enhancements and how we can really add something to everybody's life. Because also people like at the moment see like these niche looksmaxer group and like again they're going very overboard. But I was like, hey, what I think is like enhancing is like if you have a 75-year-old who can still be that sporty that he can take his grandkids to the playground and hold them and like yeah it's like an 85-year-old woman who maybe lives alone because her partner passed away and she can still go shopping and visit friends, and it sounds so simple, but that's the real problems with sort of
I love that
muscle.
the example for the guy is like he can be active, and the woman, she can spend more money, man. Like the woman can spend more money.
I didn't mean it like that. Like I thought more like on the
No, no, no. We love this. It's
I
unfiltered, man. You're not gonna get
yeah.
canceled. No
But you
one
I
know
can
do
what?
get
think.
more canceled at this point.
Well, I was gonna say, like, there does appear to be this pervasive trend with all the looks maxing, like the biohacking stuff, where it's like, yes, there is a pragmatic reason why you can do all of this stuff, right? Like, you can totally take performance enhancing drugs to help you with sports. You can take things to help you lose weight. You can take things that make you live longer, feel healthier, all of these things. But the majority of the people willing to go and buy a bunch of peptides from China and inject them in themselves, they're usually just drug addicts, actually. And so you wind up getting really bad feedback from these internet communities because it's just a bunch of like the Bay Area people who used to really, really enjoy ketamine. And they're like, okay, now the new party drug is like, I'm going to be doing C-Max and Solank because this is like a nootropic or something like that, right? And so the things that they're doing and the thoughts that they have about these substances are frequently just justification for drug use instead of an actual analysis of the data of like what is actually going on, right? Like, does this stuff actually work? Is it good? And so that just throws all of this like random gibberish into the signal, which is why I think everyone would be euphoric to have a massive data bank that you're going to provide, apparently.
It's all about data. I think I was just thinking a bit to give the current looksmaxing sort of sub world credit. I would say maybe that I'm phrasing it as half a question is like, maybe you always need the extreme to push something forward and kind of that's how world works into the limelight. And then sort of the mass adoption is actually normally more normal.
Yeah.
I made
it's totally awesome that they exist. Like, I'm a huge.
If you actually think who were the first looksmaxers, it was actually the transgenders. That's the ultimate form of looksmaxing.
I want to say it was the bodybuilders had a spin-off and the transgenders. Like both bodybuilders and transgenders align on so many different.
In a good way, actually, I credit the transgender movement a lot in terms of pushing the boundaries of body autonomy. Because like one of my core arguments, if somebody is really like having a lot of stupid bullshit arguments against enhanced games, whatever, was like, hey, do you believe a man should be able to become a woman? Which is the obviously, as we know, like the trick question or the very scary thing, especially for the left. Yeah. Or what is a woman? And then the answer, I'm making the point, is like, if we allow a society, which I, by the way, fully endorse, because I'm in this libertarian camp, everybody should like live their life as they want to be. But if we if we support that, which we shall and should, but that needs really heavy drugs to go from the appearance of a man to appearance of a woman. How can we not allow somebody who just wants to lose weight or get ripped or whatever, to use medical drugs as well for their kind of own transformation? Yeah. And I think so, but taking like that example, like sometimes sort of the more extreme groups or
they push the boundaries.
They push the boundaries.
Right?
We all profit from that.
Well, what I wanted to say earlier, you were talking about some of this stuff, and we're talking about, the more libertarian or the more state power. I think the way a lot of these things used to work is, it's very hard to create these gray boundaries, but I think there's a lot of things that like you are tacitly allowed to do. And the example I always say is like jaywalking in New York. Is it illegal to jaywalk? Like there's a law in the books. You can't jaywalk in New York.
Okay,
you can jaywalk in New York in front of a police officer. Jaywalking is crossing the road incorrectly. Like, the light is red for the pedestrians and you cross. Like that is on the books illegal, right? You obviously shouldn't walk into incoming traffic. Now, if there's nobody and a cop sees you, no police officer in New York is going to book you and send you to jail for jaywalking. Or like doing weed in Denver 1 week before it's legal, right? There's all these things that we tacitly allow. Or, for example, drinking on a college campus at 20 years old. Right? There's this argument that's like maybe not logically very satisfying, but does end up having, I think, the best outcomes, which is, you allow some discretion with the enforcement of the state where it's like, okay, is there a real victim here? Right? If there's a bunch of 20-year-old college kids that are drinking some beer in their dad's basement, who cares? Right? Or if someone jaywalks in New York, who cares? And like, you think about informed consent and you think about severity, and it's not something you can do on the scale of hundreds of millions of people in a clean way that everyone will feel they got a fair shake, and someone will always be unfairly on one or the other side, but there's something there. But coming back, so the enhanced games give us the super quick like 2-sentence pitch. Basically, what I've always heard it as, and I want to hear it you, but it's like, it's like the Olympics, but you're allowed to do a bunch of performance-enhancing steroids. You're allowed to take performance-enhancing drugs. Obviously, like you say, with safeguards, with medical staff, with data analysis. And I know that's a super interesting part of the business that I want to talk about. Would you say that's like the correct description?
Yep. That's the great. So I would say we have 3 innovations. We allow performance-enhancing drugs. Again, only medical, only fully FDA approved. That does exclude crystal meth. that does exclude as well, by the way. But it's important. Anything, it does also exclude anything in trials. So no experimental stuff. It needs to be something you can get in your pharmacy, with your doctor together, because it solves both. We know what these drugs are. I have to say it again. I believe, big shout out to the US here, the FDA and the whole trial and the whole research process biotech and pharma companies go through to approve a drug. It's the most rigorous one in the world. So when something is FDA approved, we have enough data for a doctor with the patient together to make an informed consent. And second, also you get pure quality. Yeah, you're not ordering it in China.
Yeah, you know where you're getting it from.
You know where you're getting it.
If you want to use 10 times more testosterone than
Yeah, I was
a
going to ask
normal
this,
TRT
actually.
doctor would prescribe, are you allowed to do this, or do you have to go with whatever doctor will write you the biggest TRT script?
Well, you would, okay, two different answers. Like, hypothetically speaking, you need to have a doctor to get it. So you need to convince, if you're like, hey, I need or want 10 times as much as maybe the right dose is, or the proper dose. Yeah, you need to have a doctor, but you can pick your doctor. So we're not saying, oh, there is only our doctors. And if they say no, you can't. No, you can come up and say, oh, I have a doctor, but it needs to be within the medical system. So proper doctor in the US. But second, just because like the question is a good one, but it shows is already one of the many, and I actually want to do a blog post next week about all these urban legends, because people instinctively think, that's the joke when I tell it to people, everybody's like, like they're gonna do like the more the merrier. And that is not how performance enhancing drugs work. Yeah. If you look at it, comes a little bit from the bodybuilding, because bodybuilding is like, you really want to make your body as big as possible. So I don't want to say anything against bodybuilding, but I think it's like, it's a way more unnatural state and look, if you really want to be on the top. And a lot of the bad rap of performance enhancing drugs comes from that sport, because like there might be people who think at least the more the merrier. If you look
performance in bodybuilding is just being 400 pounds, right? So it's not necessarily performance in any other domain that anyone cares about.
It's really, really blowing up your body, maybe. So, but if you look at what we are doing, we have in the first event, and then we're going to add more events, but the first enhanced games on May 24th, we have 3 events: swimming, running, and weightlifting. And in these categories, like, it is not just looking better. Like, it's actually the opposite. Like, if you look at, for example, swimmers, if they put on too many muscles, they get slower because they get heavier, but also their swimming is so much more than muscle strength. It's flexibility, it's technique and everything. So what they only doing, again, with a doctor together, they finding that icing on the cake dose, which is helping them, maybe be a little bit more strong, but most importantly, and that is what I'm so excited about, because I'm very, very sure, and by the way, you're the first podcast I'm talking about that, because I think it's going to dominate the sports business in the second half of the year. What we're showing already, and I see it because I see the data, we're going to release that in the second half. But what I'm seeing already in the data, that most of the performance enhancing effects come from better recovery, including better sleep. Because and if you think that through, and again, nobody has ever proven it. By the way, a lot of athletes would tell you that that's what they feel. They're not getting bigger. They don't want to get bigger, but they can train more. They can, it's like, but nobody has ever put that in a, again, scientifically accepted gold standard data set. But if we prove that, and that's the fact, I can tell you, all these athletes who are enhancing, I would really very vaguely say more than 50% of their improvements comes from better recovery, better sleep. If this is the case, I think, and that's my plan for the second half when we release the data, is I not just can start, but I think it's the right thing to start, morally right thing, the discussion. Is it actually morally okay to not allow performance enhancing drugs for everybody in sport? Because these people, they pick a horrible job if you look at damage to their body. Being an Olympian athlete, being an NFL player, being like, all of this is like a drag, and it's pain and destruction for your body. Or talk to a Cirque du Soleil artist or whatever. There's many reasons why they all retire in their early 30s.
I mean, this is actually beyond just performance in athletics too, right? You can generalize this to stuff like construction or other blue collar labor, where you have people who they age out of Yeah, they age out of this because they just destroy their body over like 40
Yes.
years.
So, and that is, by the way, a fact, by the way, nobody wants to talk about. It's one of the most if I always think, oh my God, if people would use the same amount of passion they're hating on enhanced games for actually highlighting how risky I mean, like, people are obviously allowed to do their job choice, but like, it's a very, very, very risky or very destructive one. So, and if we show that actually performance, and we're going to show that because I see it, that performance enhancing drugs actually unfold their potential mostly by repairing the damage better, which they're doing, I think the moral consequence will be not allowing performance enhancing drugs is actually very bad. It's literally like somebody in the old days, you would say, oh, you're a coal miner. And what we would say is like, you're at higher risk of lung cancer. So please do your screenings and whatever. And instead we would say, no, you are at higher risk of lung cancer, but I don't want to talk about it. You're not going to go to screening.
Masks are banned and you can't wear any helmets, right?
Yes, exactly.
Enjoy your mining.
And that is what we're doing at all these sports. They damning their sports, their heroes to deliberate damage. And nobody wants to talk about that. And they got away with it because nobody had the data. But and this reminds me, by the way, now I'm jumping, but I'm happy if we talk about it. So like, but I had the same journey with psychedelics. This may my two big passions, the two companies I started myself the last 10 years was like enhanced games and then bringing back psychedelics. And it's so much alike because like when I started psychedelics, there was all the data from the 60s. It was never a question. Yeah. But so many people had all these urban legends and told me it's going to end your career, whatever. And I was sitting there, was like, I am looking at an enormous amount of data in the 50s and 60s, which tells me, again, these medications, I think psychedelics should be only medically used, but these medications have an enormous potential to heal mental health issues and practically very, very low side effect profile. That was what I saw. And I was like, do you see something different in this data? And people were not even looking at it. Like, yeah. And now after 10 years with new data, we practically recreated all the data from the 60s. Like we've proven it. Now we had even Trump acknowledging it, like, and we're bringing psychedelics back. And I think the same, I'm very proud of that, or my prediction, we're going to sit here in 2-3 years, most likely quicker than it went with psychedelics. And people will say, okay, enhanced games have changed sort of the entire sports ecosystem because again, with data and with science, we're going to show that performance enhancing drugs are in the right way, with a doctor together, medical use, proper stuff, FDA approved, are actually net very, very beneficial for athletes and for everyday person.
So I want to ask, while we're on the games, so you said swimming, running, and weightlifting. How many different events within those? You know, like over, you know, you have to mention every single one, but I assume it's not just like one swimming event.
No,
right?
it's
a couple
it's
different.
running. It's 110-meter sprint and 100-meter sprint and 110-meter hurdles. Yeah, we have several
kind of like a selection of the classics.
Yes.
Right. Like the 100-meter dash or sprint, which is like the classic, right? I assume the 100-meter freestyle for swimming, a couple of these are classics. I have to ask because we're sponsored. You guys have to talk to Polymarket because this would be one of the most things is have people be able to say, you know, oh, do I think there's going to be a world record that's broken today?
We speak to Polymarket. I hope they're going to put on bets. And
all right, we'll call. This is live business deals on the podcast. We will call our people at Polymarket. We know a lot of people. We'll get them to do Polymarket. It'll be very, very fun. We should 100% do this. I always like joining. You know, we're lucky enough to have some really fun sponsors, and I think there's fun things that we can do with them. So yeah, I'm excited to.
I would bet, like, I think we're gonna break 3 to 5 world records. Not all.
I was gonna ask you 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Gun to your head, which is like the one, like if you could only bet one world record is going to be broken, which one do you think?
100-meter freestyle swimming.
Yeah, that will be pretty epic.
I can tell you what one which is the hardest take is like controversial maybe, and I want to phrase it like as a really like just my own thoughts, but I think the 100-meter sprint will be the hardest because my guess is that the world record was done on performance enhancing drugs.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask is of these events, you think probably that a lot of them are done on some amount of performance enhancing drugs, and they're definitely towing the line, right? We know that they toe the line for sure.
So they are in an interesting way. WADA is very open. So they did publish several studies for pro athletic events, and sort of kind of their statement is that they believe, not just believe, they did actually anonymous surveys with athletes. So there is this one study, which I think is the number is 44%, where WADA says, not us, that they believe 44% of all professional athletes use performance enhancing drugs, which, by the way, makes all these events completely meaningless, because you need...
Yeah, because it's who's willing to take more risk, right? Who gets lucky with the doping test.
Exactly. You watch it and you're like, is this guy or person winning because it's the best? Or like, so it because the framework is missing. And by the way, that what most athletes we talked about at the very early days already said, like, that's why we love you guys, because like they know, by the way. It's like, it's a little bit like,
they're in the locker rooms with these people.
Yeah.
And they're like, we can't prove it, but like several of our athletes were like, I was standing there winning silver, and I knew that the person winning gold most likely did something, and I couldn't prove it. So how does it work? So a lot of the athletes, do it in their off times. So, which is the likelihood, it's kind of a statistics game.
You cycle on and off, and hopefully it's out of your system by the time they test you.
Or, which is even worse, they're using other drugs to mask things. So it's kind of a scientific rat race. Then we're in that where like, people trying things which are experimental, whatever. That's an even worse. Yeah. And then my personal suspicion, and I can't prove it, and it's just like, but like, I have a good feeling for business models. That's my job. I think that some of these big leagues and the IOC, whatever, they realize what we have as a strength is like, we're living in a world which wants novelty all the time.
Yeah.
So
you want to break records, right?
You want to break
you need the record to be broken.
Now think about it. Over the last 50 years, we humans haven't evolved. It's not that the human of today is like massively advanced to the human in the 70s. Like, so breaking world records, it should be something super, super rare. So, and I think it's rarer than it's good for them. So I think there is a little bit of like, you know what, like looking away because we want superstars.
And there's sports that, I'm not a big baseball fan, but like in baseball, everyone knows that there was an era where everyone was on dope, and no one looks at the pitches. No one says, oh, the speeds from that era are comparable, because everyone knows. Or for example, in the marathon, which we recently broke the 2-hour mark, right? For example, I think a lot of people are saying, well, a lot of the difference was made with the shoe.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's also non-medical like gear stuff.
Yeah, there's also non-medical enhancements. So the shoes. What do you think about that? Well, like if someone shows up.
Just to cover. So what I want to say is like all of that is kind of not perfect. So our assumption because that was actually the number one question I got asked all the time from investors in the early days. Or maybe you're not going to break world records at all because like all the world records are done on. So, and I was like, look, I don't think all the world records are done on performance enhancing drugs. And even the ones where people did use them, they didn't do it perfectly because they had to hide it.
Yeah, because they're worried about hiding it.
And my assumption, which we now have actually proven right last year when we did a so-called exhibition event in swimming and we broke a world record, is that performance enhancing drugs done, again, always come back to my formula, perfectly under medical supervision with the right drugs, like that will beat even the secret performance and enhancing drugs, which people take sort of secretly, like not allowed in the Olympics. So, and we got to prove that, but that's
basically
the reason why
uncapping the entire process is going to give you an advantage, right? Like, because you don't have to deal with all of the testing downsides and all of that stuff. Like, you can just full on optimize for winning the thing.
Yeah, and to the last day, but then we wanted everything.
Probably also these people aren't optimizing the performance enhancing drugs regimen itself, right? So
well, they can't because we don't
also
actually
start
have the
to learn
data
what
for
is
it,
better,
right? Like that's the whole thing that you're trying to tease out here. Is this is going to be your number one trial of enhanced games, right? But presumably after like 10 years of this, you're going to get much better at these PED stacks that the athletes are using.
And by the way, just like one thing, I know you can go me because I want to make this one step because like people try to deliberately sort of understand when we call about trials. They're like, oh, it's again one of the urban legends, your athletes are guinea pig. What I'm saying is like, they're all taking the approved drugs, and the only thing I'm trialing, the data collection, is like to really see it in a comprehensive manner, benchmark it next to each other, exact combination, unfortunately, like I think, hopefully really sincere strive for collecting data and doing everything super scientific is some competitors trying to misconstrue it and say, oh, they need the data because they don't even know what we don't. We know fully what we're doing because, like, again, it's approved drugs, I just want to see the bigger picture. And I think the bigger picture will really put a dent in the universe by shocking the sport.
Something that could be really funny is if after releasing your data, you see an increase in Olympic records being broken, right? Like you do your studies
That would be funny.
and you release the data on how to run an optimal PED stack, and then magically, like the Olympics, which does not have any drug use allowed, they all just get better too, right? Just step functional increase. I assume that happens also.
I think, I really mean it. Like, I don't always want to benchmark us versus the Olympics because I love the Olympics. Like, my only sentence is they should be clean because then it's real. Like, I want to see, it would be so cool to have a natural event, but then people should be really natural, and to have an enhanced version. Yeah. So I don't want to always feed into that, what sometimes the media wants to make it like, that we are like sort of the competitor of the Olympics. I think we can so well coexist. Like, but what I actually hope is the other way around. I think one of the reasons, if I want to give the IOC and WADA the benefit of a doubt, that they really sincere in their strive to not have people do doping in their system. Like, their number one argument is that they don't have the data and that it's a rat race against doctors and they don't have the capacity. So if I'm giving them the benefit of a doubt that this is the only reason, then we should be their best friends. Because we're going to have the data, and they have a comparison group, like, and I offered it to them already, didn't take it up so far. I would even donate money. Like, I'm happy to be the benchmark. I'm happy to be the control group in science and help them to get fully clean and really coexist and sort of be friendly to each other.
And so tell us about, I think, and part of why I think this business is going to do very well, I think virality and marketing matters a lot. And I think owning your own virality in your marketing. And I think, because of the controversial aspect, which some people will think it's very controversial, hopefully you're breaking a lot of records. If you don't, even if you don't break a lot of records, that's also going to be news because everyone's going to start thinking the Olympic, everyone's doping, etc. Tell us a little bit about the two other lines of business. The way I understand it, you have three lines of business. One is the enhanced games. That's actually not maybe the most commercially relevant, but it's kind of like the crown jewel. We'll see what ends up happening there. But I think the other two lines are actually going to be super interesting, which, as I understand, is a research division and then telehealth, so people can say, okay, great, you have the research division, you have the enhanced games where you showcase it, and then great, you watch this, you saw these people do these amazing things, you see these people recover, hey, maybe you also want to try some of these things. Here's a safe and regulated way to try it. How's that moving forward? What's the regulation on? Because I saw some stuff from the administration in the US.
Big changes recently.
Yeah, it changed recently. What happened there?
But you described it perfectly.
Sorry, a lot of questions. I know.
Yeah. Like, to go through it, like, so the only adjustment I would make in your description is like the sport event is really the core. Yeah, and by the way, I think it's going to be highly profitable because what we cracked with the sport event is the social media code. Like, if you look at what is the most valuable thing or the most valuable formula in our world in terms of marketing and reach is free attention because of virality combined with emotion. So and by the way, I'm not saying that now because it happened 2 days ago. Everybody who has listened to a podcast where, like, if I talk about the enhanced games, I always, since 12 months, I brought up as my favorite anti-example, I brought up Live Golf, who went under some days ago, because like Live Golf was only...
Sorry, can you tell us what this is really quickly?
So Live Golf, again, the question only is already so offensive to Live Golf, but I love it because Live Golf was the try of the Saudi government to build up a new competitor to the PGA, the big golf league, They invested, the rumors are, they now want to talk it down. Normally, the Saudis want to talk volumes up. Now, at the moment, they saw a shake. Because the rumors are they spent more than $5 billion for a Me Too event only, and nobody cared. Literally, we did a survey, which I loved. Like, it was a proper third-party survey, so not my family and friends. Like, in America, we asked more than 1,000 people in November. The number is most likely much higher now. Many questions, but number one question was like, have you heard about enhanced games? And the insane number in November was that 61% of all Americans asked had already heard about the enhanced games. By the way, the first event is happening in some weeks now, like in some days. So this is insane. Yeah. And we achieved that 61% without any marketing budget. We spent zero. It's only earned media, only because it's
just a great idea, man. Like, everybody in the entire universe, when they hear about the Olympics, they're like, this is awesome because it's the best in the world competing, right? And then their next thought is like, what if they were better? Like, why can't they be better? Why are we banning drug testing? I want to see like the sickest freak beats in like the entire human race beating each other up, right? Like, I want to see absolute machine gladiators racing against each other.
Yeah,
it's just something that literally every American has wanted.
It's actually, I personally think that it's more than that. It's evolutionary biology. It's like, I think it's really ingrained in us that we want to know who's the best. But back to the survey, and then we asked people, do you know live golf? And where Saudi spent, again, most likely more, but like $5 billion, and maybe it was like 40-something% new live golf with $5 billion spent. But then the second questions were centering around what you think about it, and especially there was interesting the 39% who hadn't heard about us when we told them the pollster what enhanced games is. Literally 100% of the people who just learned about enhanced games had a strong emotion. And by the way, the smaller part, but some said this is where like shouldn't be allowed, but I like it because what you really want in our world, you want attention and then emotional, you want debates, you want people going home and like, wow, I learned about enhanced games today. Like, I had so many friends tell me that an investor is like in the roadshow, like, oh my God, we're talking about that some evenings with the kids and it's a debate, whatever. While again, nobody debates live golf. There was always like, so we cracked with the sport event, sort of that formula of attention and emotion. And I believe that will allow us in the next 2 years in record speed to really build a global sports franchise around centered that basic idea of performance enhancing drugs that are allowed and endorsed. And that, by the way, is a multi-billion-dollar business. If you look at proper sports franchises, they're usually double-digit billion-dollar businesses because sports is such a big business. People just underestimate how complicated it is to break into that. Again, the Saudis didn't do it with $5 billion. So it's so hard in our world to create, again, attention.
Attention is just the hardest thing to get.
Love, and that's idea. So I think to be proven the next 3 years, but I think we cracked that. And I think we're going to talk in, hopefully again soon, and then in 2 years, whatever, and we're going to have built up a multi-billion dollar business, sports only. So I really want to make a point that sports is not like a means to an end or whatever.
And is that going to be more Olympics type events, or do you also imagine a world where it's like maybe you do American football, maybe you do basketball, maybe you do tennis?
Yes, we have a full growth plan in our heads, and it's going in. We have various layers. Like, let's see team sports, because obviously then you need to have people play against each other. So you need more of them. But like, first of all, we have more Olympic disciplines we can do. Second, my number one favorite thing I want to do already in year 2 is having an over 50 category and then bring back beloved sports stars. Actually, they're not going to chase world records. Enhancements are great, but you're not going to enhance somebody in the 50s to break a world record. But what I want to bring back people who are famous for something, for a time or whatever, and beat themselves. We have one athlete who I love, big shout out to Megan. Yeah, Megan Romano is in the enhanced game. She's end of 30s, and she's very, like, we document her whole story. She's not going in to break a world record because end of 30s, like, I would always say enhancements give you maybe 5 to 7 years, but she wants to beat her own best time. And that is, I think, almost a more emotional story. Yes, I want the breaking world records because that's going to give us the global headlines. But if you think about us three here, even if we perfectly enhance and train for 2 years, we're not going to break a world record. World records are very, actually, non-relatable, if you're really honest. Yeah. But if I see my peer, I'm 48 now, and if I see another guy in the 40s or 50s doing something he was kind of famous for in his 20s and 30s, what is my emotional reaction? I want what this person is on. So for the role model function, actually, this sort of from next year on over 50 is much more important. But then we want to have new categories. We might do actually combat sport. There is by the way, you can also have fun stuff. You can add a out of competition celebrity versus professional athletes thing. We have so many celebrities who inbounded us, the younger ones who say, oh, I can beat the world record. I can beat these. I don't think I can, but like, let's put it on. Let's have an iShow speed racing against our real athletes, and maybe he wins, maybe not. Like, by the way, we got inbounded by robot companies. Like, we said, can't we not do an out of competition thing where we have robots doing crazy shit against the best athletes? So I think there is such a big, like, cool entertainment.
There's a lot more creativity also, right?
Yes.
Like, it's an unlocking of creativity, of you can do new things, and it doesn't have to be plus minus what we've been doing for the last 50, half a century. I think it's super interesting. So what's the regulatory change that happened as well?
Say again?
Sorry, if you want to add something on the last point.
Well, so if we go through it, so that's the sport event. I just want to make clear, like, I think the sport event alone, financially or business-wise, is going to be a multiple-dollar business, but also, like, it's going to be huge. And so so that's the center of Enhanced. So then the second business line is we building up our own telehealth platform. Actually, I always say, very honest, the company I'm copying is Red Bull. Red Bull, genius company, private, so people are aware of it. They know the product, but like, they discovered 20 years ago that instead of only spending on marketing, they can own sports assets and on average, hopefully make money with it and create value, but also additionally kind of for free boost their core business of consumer products, selling Red Bull cans. And the same, like, there are great companies out there, Row, Hims, people might know, which are already telehealth platform offering people they all started a little bit in like, oh, we're offering people like Hims and Row things which you don't want to talk about, like erectile dysfunction, whatever, but they kind of already morph into that more enhancement like thing, like peptides, test or whatever. But they all need to do marketing permanently. And if you look at their costs, that's the biggest part of their spendings is customer acquisition. Like, in the future, if you see the coolest athletes in the world doing really breaking world records and all of that in a company called Enhanced, and you think about enhancing yourself, where you're going to go, you're going to go to us as the trusted source. And I believe we will be, not just saying that, like, I think we know much more than others. To also get your scientifically based sort of enhancement. So that's why we have
it's the easiest sales pitch of all times, right? It's like, it's always, you look at the athlete and, oh, I buy the shoe because I think if I buy the shoe, I can perform as well as them. Or if I buy, the gloves or whatever.
But this is already like a hard pill to swallow. Like, the idea that the shoe is responsible for any runner's success is like extremely dubious.
It's much more
the
divorced,
idea that
but
the
here it's like,
enhancement is responsible for it, like, you can buy that really easily. Like, that's actually and it's definitely more true. And the idea of going and saying,
we're doing much more authentic. We're not paying people to say something. We're really showing our products in action. So to say,
people believe this. It's not like the looksmaxing or biohacking stuff where someone's like zooming really far in. They're like, oh, look, my crow's feet are like 20% better after I took this peptide. Nobody really cares about that, right? But like, you actually do care if you see a 40-year-old athlete outperforming themselves at age 20 and like crying as she crosses the finish line. That's very clearly like, you can point to that, and literally everyone in the world is
scientifically recorded. That's 100%. You nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, but
I think it's the sort of thing where it becomes impossible to ignore, and you own your own marketing and your own virality machine, which is very powerful, and you can make a lot of money off of it. Like you say, you can build a beautiful franchise around that. So then there's the telehealth platform, which there was some recent regulation. Can you give us like the super quick what happened?
So our telehealth platform is, but there are so many, by the way, enhancement products, which are either even supplements. So we have a supplement line, which is non-prescription drugs, like, and they do work. Just saying, like, it's like not like you. So it depends, again, just how strong you want to go or how quick. But like, sort of, there is really, and I take all of them from glycine to urolithic acid and stuff like that. So we have the supplement lines, and then we have prescription drugs, and there are already good FDA, or not just good, like really good FDA approved medications like testosterone, the most simple one for men, but this is what does work. You don't need to go, by the way, immediately to peptides. Like if you don't do testosterone as a man, like over 40, that's the base. I would say the science shows, again, if you don't have exclusion criteria, again, that's why you need a doctor who looks at you. But for the average man above 40, mild TRT changes your life. And the same for women over 40, by the way, when they go through menopause and everything, like mild hormone replacement therapy, life-changing. So we're offering that. Then there are actually peptides, people mix that up, who are fully FDA approved. For example, tesamorelin. So we have already those. And now to your question, there is a big move from the FDA under RFK's guidance to allow certain peptides, which the Biden administration banned. It's a little bit, I don't want to say tricky, because again, I want to the data, because these peptides are out of patent and are kind of so old. These are mostly like peptides coming out of Russian labs in the 80s, where if you ask me personally, they do work. They have very low risk because like millions of people take it. And I believe in that sort of very much in that sort of wildlife data or real life data. By the way, another thing that the current administration, HHS and FDA does really well, they want to collect a lot of the data and make sense out of it, because it's a shame that we neglect sort of this, like, let's say, real life data. But also to say, like, to not give in to critics, but just to be like really presented in a way. There are some peptides who just don't have a lot of proper modern clinical studies. So our stand is, if the FDA is gonna allow some of these peptides to be so-called compounded, it's a different way to regulate. They're not actively allowing them as a medication, but they're allowing them to be prescribed and sold. We have, I would say, arguably the best medical commission in the world, so the best scientists on it for performance enhancing thematics, which mostly at the moment take care of our athletes. But like with them together, we're gonna make a decision which of the allowed, sort of when the FDA allows more peptides, which of those we're gonna offer, because we believe that beyond the regulatory thing, because that would be a check, we're allowed to do it, so it fits in our framework. But because not on all of them is a lot of data, we will make a decision so that we can really be true to ourselves, which is really science-based. And now comes to the third pillar. That's why the third one, the data pillar, is indeed so important. We're going to be the first one who actually produce more data in that field. And at the minimum, this data will allow us to do better decisions, both for our athletes going forward every year and for the everyday consumer. At the best, and I'm hoping for it, we actually can even get like some sort of intellectual property out of it, because data in biotech, if you do it right, sometimes allows you to create, recreate, at least like marketing claims, which is the weakest version of intellectual property, maybe even some stronger ones. So, but if I would look at enhanced games as an investor, or what I can tell investors is what we have is a sports business, what we have is the telehealth business. That's probably fully there existing, and we're gonna have a lot of data, and I think we all agree in this world data is incredibly valuable, and I'm gonna work very hard to make the most out of it. That could be intellectual property, that could be just better service for our clients, but the data will really influence and drive the other two businesses.
So maybe a little bit personally, I have to go into depth. What kind of stuff are you on that maybe a normal person who still has more of an antiquated view of some of these PEDs or whatever, wouldn't think to be on?
The funniest possible answer right now is he just says, I'm not on any of this stuff. There's not enough data.
No. I'm very open with that. I'm on a lot of things.
It would be very funny if you were like...
No. By the way, I really like, again, and hopefully, if people, I think, hopefully say one thing, they can disagree with me, they can agree with me, they can like me, not like, but hopefully I'm authentic. Because like, that's when I come back to the very beginning of this podcast and to the very beginning of my career, I always thought like, I don't want to be somebody else than myself, because why would I? Like, I don't need to. Like, I could, if I don't like my life, I could say tomorrow, look, I stop all of it, go on my yacht, like, and just hang out and read books. Like, I don't like that. I want to do what I'm doing, but also, like, I don't need to project anything which I'm not, because it would be, by the way, bad. Like, I think, like, I'm so much, again, we haven't talked a lot about psychedelics, but I so much believe that the number one reason to be on this earth, if you go into the spiritual realm, is being happy and being a good person. There is no reason to pretend something you're not. So people get what I say, like, what you see is what you get. Anyway, so I'm doing that since a long time. By the way, I'm so satisfied at the moment, because literally, and I remember it, when you have like sort of early memories of your career where you really know where you were sitting when you were thinking about that. And like, I was always kind of vain a bit. So I was always already in my 20s. I was like, I don't want to fucking age. It's bad. Like, this whole storyline we tell ourselves that aging is cool and makes you wiser. I want to get smarter and wiser, but why do I have to deteriorate it while doing that? Like, so when I had this first success with Rebo Pharma and Alnylam, I was looking at my own industry where I started, and with passion was talking to scientists, was like, hey guys, yes, it's great that we cure things and focus on the very bad stuff, but like, can't we also like do this and aging? And everybody looked at me as if I'm an alien. Like, for 20 years, you can't imagine, like, the biotech industry over the last 20, 30 years is so focused on kind of the nichier the better. Oh my God, there is a disease which only has 10,000 patients per year. Great. We can do a very small trial, get it fast tracked, and then charge $1 million. Yeah. And by the way, important, I want to help these 10,000 people. But I never really understood fundamentally how we would not strive as an industry to find the one medication everybody wants to take. That's how you become a trillionaire, is when you do things like Elon Musk does, or like Mark Zuckerberg did. They made things which a lot of people want to use. Like, everybody almost will use Starlink soon. Like, yeah, everybody wants to be on Instagram. We never say, if you imagine how Zuckerberg would have said, you know what, I want to make Instagram really cool. I only want to make it for 10,000 people. No, you want to really make it for everybody. And I always try to apply that on drug development. And it was really kind of like, I was seen as kind of a crazy person. They couldn't say I'm dumb because like I had the credentials, but like I was always seen as the odd one out, I would say in English. Yeah. And finally the world is changing. By the way, the one thing we haven't, well, you mentioned it a bit, is like, I think we're going to change it a lot with enhanced games, but what was actually coming before us and we kind of building on is the way GLP-1s and all of these weight loss drugs have paved, because like they are actually originally made for diabetes. Then people were like, okay, you can lose weight. But then the pharma industry stupidly at the beginning was like, okay, but only for obese people. Yeah. And now Lilly and Novo sitting there and cashing in billions and billions, because most of the people who take GLP-1s are actually taking it for vanity. Like me, let's start that. That's one of the things I'm doing. I'm like a stress eater, and a good stress. If I'm busy, I would always eat a cookie here and there and da-da-da. And I don't. Like, I just take GLP-1s and it's gone. It's quieting the part of my mind which is craving food. Yeah, which is my stress response. So amazing. It's outsourced discipline. Yeah. So I'm really proud that finally, like after 27 years, like the way how I see the medical system, drug development, yes, let's cure diseases, but let's also find the few drugs, or hopefully many drugs, which really everybody wants and who are good for everybody. Or for nothing is good for everybody. It was too generalistic, but like, who are good for many people, where the total addressable market is really big. Yeah, and that's what's starting. And people, there was this number last week, all the GLP-1s together make more revenues than all the AI companies together. That is the power of vanity. And by the way, we just at the beginning, I think vanity is the ultimate. If you would ask me for the one sector people should put their money.
Well, it's the K-shaped economy, right? These are the two things people spend money on. These are the two sectors that grow. It's tech and health. As people have more money, do you really want a house that has 50 rooms, or are you okay with 10 rooms? Would you rather have 5 times more rooms, or would you rather spend 5 times the money on your health?
Yeah.
Right? Would you rather have a 5 times better phone or 5 times better piece of bread?
Yeah.
So I think, it's the K-shaped economy. I think people really want a vehicle to say, how do I express a view on someone who's really pushing the boundaries? I'm going to show you a little bit here because we have people on the podcast that we really think are doing interesting things. And a lot of when we think about people we screen, you have a large platform, you have a huge following, you're very well known, a little notorious, controversial sometimes, which we like. We want to have interesting people on, which is good. I think if you don't have one or two controversies nowadays, you're a boring person a little bit.
100%.
And I think you're going to get a lot bigger. And when we screen candidates for the podcast, one of the checklists is there a 5 to 10% chance that this person becomes 100 times more famous than they are right now? And if the answer is no, if the answer is there's not a 5% chance that this person becomes 100 times more famous, which in your case is basically becoming a household name, right? We just don't have them on. So I think there's a very large chance that this is going to become big. Obviously not financial advice. Like we said, if you take crazy drugs and if you invest in crazy things, don't come crying. But, there's some stock tickers that might be relevant for people that might want exposure to a little bit more of a pure play, because part of what happens here as well is that some of these companies that are developing these drugs, right? You have Lilly, you have some of these others, they're actually cannibalizing some of their existing product lines, right? And so, whenever you have a thesis, there's kind of two ways to invest. One is you find a secular thesis and you say, how do I express this, right? So I think peptides are going to do great. How do I express this? The other is you look at a company and then you work backwards to a thesis. I think the first one is a lot more intellectually satisfying and is where you really find that breakout stuff. You don't look first at the stock. You first look at what do I think people haven't priced in or has an asymmetric upside. And what you're always looking for there, the holy grail, is like the pure play, right? And I think this brings together a lot of the things we talk about on the podcast. And when we got intro to you, which I've already, known of you for a long time and been moving in similar circles, but it's the pure play on, hey, biotech is going to grow a lot. We're going to enter a new golden age of biotech, number one. Number two, some of the regulatory, maybe molasses, maybe it was a little bit too slow. We don't want to go full approval. I think you've been very clear about that. I think probably Lucas would like to do some crazier stuff than you, maybe. Maybe I'm a little more traditional. I'm a little bit more naturalistic, and everyone will be able to select where they want to be. You want to push it. Maybe you don't want to be the company really pushing. You had this company there, the guy the other day that had a piece in the New York Times for saying they're the first $1 billion single employee company. And then it's like a day later, all this crazy, we won't say allegedly a lot of fraud going on. Allegedly, people are saying. So you want to push the boundaries, but not too much. And then lastly, I think owning your own marketing, owning your own top of funnel, that can also be an incredibly, incredibly lucrative business on its own. Just very, very valuable. And it's the full stack from, hey, mass marketing appeal, compete with a lot of these entrenched and frankly not professionally run, right? The Olympics as a business. Are the people who are on the Olympics committee people who are selected for being the best at business? Probably not, right? That's not where they're getting these people from. They're not serial entrepreneurs.
Profit. That's my point. Very great point, because I would tell everybody, hey, exactly that. I don't think it's so professionally run, and they make billions of profit. I want a part of that, if not all of that.
Well, these people have a monopoly on this, right? And so now, hey, out of the zoo into the wilderness, it's time to compete. And, I think consumers will be able to choose what is more interesting to them. I think you have a novel view. You've done a lot of stuff. What's the latest news on the stock stuff? I know there's a acquisition vehicle. Where's that at? Probably this will come out. We'll aim for Thursday or Friday. We'll see how we do.
This week? Yeah. So if it comes out on Friday, I think which is the perfect day, because Friday. So if you're listening then and followed that what we're just saying, and if it is Friday now, then it's our first day of trading under our ticker. So we're closing and we starting on Friday, hopefully today. We're going to trade under ENHA on the New York Stock Exchange. And I'm super biased. Disclaimer, I don't need to say it. I'm one of the founders. I'm the chairman. Like, I love this business. I agree with you. I think we can be a category defining company. I think we can, the Olympics, badly managed, show us how much money you can make in sports. Yeah, I think we're going to kill it on the telehealth side. So I think we're going to build a really cool company, and whoever loves what we're doing, I mean, first of all, the number one thing is I hope you all who are listening become fans. Like zoom in, dial in, like on various platforms from Roku to Rumble to YouTube to local ones. I know obviously in social media, watch it because then you see what we're building. But yes, so if you believe in on the financial business side, super honored if people become shareholders.
Yeah,
I think
of
we're building
course.
something great.
I think it's very interesting. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else you want to cover on enhanced. I wanted to ask about a few other things. Is there anything else that you think you want to cover there? I think we did pretty
If
comprehensive.
Lucas wants his answers quickly, so because we diverted and
Yeah.
up with tests, so what I'm doing is like since I'm in my 30s, I measured again. I diverted because I told you how satisfied because we like I want. It's not like that we just came to that. Like I working on that practically in my mind since 27 years and on myself. And so when I was 30, I measured my testo, and I'm since then keeping it there. So I'm not again. I didn't even want to. I would have never thought call it doping or whatever because like it's just keeping it there because it's the number one correlation between male aging and sort of the negative aging is the decrease in testo. So I would tell any man, look, think about it, go to a doctor, talk about it. But TRT, I'm doing. I'm doing some peptides, the FDA approved one, especially testosterone, because it's like improving your own human growth hormone production. I'm taking GLP-1s, as I said, for outsourced discipline. I'm doing
Which specific ones, actually? Is it like semaglutide, tirzepatide?
I'm taking tomorrow, so tirzepatide.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I'm doing actually two other very old drugs which are out of patent, which is Jardiance, I think you pronounce it. I can't pronounce the ingredient, like the brand name. One of the brands is Jardiance, and acarbose, which are two drugs, very simplified, also like diabetes drugs. Like always very simplified. Hopefully nobody's crucifying me too simplified, but they're filtering out sugar and carbs from your food, and like so and they very provenly prolong longevity, but also like make you sort of more defined and slimmer. I'm doing DHEA. I'm doing pregnenolone. I'm actually doing a lot of things for sleep. And there's a lot of basic things like glycine, like magnesium, like these kind of stuff. I just discovered, because again, the data is very good, there are so-called orexin drugs, which is a new category of sleep drugs.
I've seen people saying that these have been really good for treating ADHD too, actually.
So I don't know ADHD, but like if you look at it, like in the past, sleep drugs had correctly so a very bad rap because actually the truth is there were no sleep drugs. What there were drugs which kind of knock you out.
Yep.
But they were very bad because you had the feeling you slept, but the truth is you didn't sleep. You didn't get quality deep sleep.
They destroy your sleep partitioning, right? Like you have usually like a given amount of like deep sleep, REM, et cetera, different phases of sleep. And they just like screwed the whole thing up and said, yeah, I mean, you were technically unconscious kind of, I guess.
Exactly. So that's what sleep aids, again, correctly so, the old generations have a very bad rap. So it then came that new drug or category of drugs, these orexin drugs, and they are really sort of supporting the natural wake sleep mechanism and provenly give you much more deep sleep and REM sleep, which is in itself super healthy. There was the first study I saw last week from Japan that actually they can help support preventing Alzheimer's, dementia. Why? Because in our sleep, and especially in deep and REM, our body undergoes our brain undergoes a cleansing mechanism, all of that. So very obsessed with sleep, and I just added these kind of drugs. I think that's a good sort of summary. But by the way, also want to say it again, like one of the most important things is training. So I'm doing gym every day. I try to do cardio every day. I love Peloton, HIIT training. I do weight training every day. You need to work out.
But yeah, do you want to run us into, so obviously you at this point have a bunch of different companies and a ton of different things we do. I think we'll get into that. Do you want to start off? So you were born in Germany, correct? And you studied biochem. Do you want to start us off? Because you started off you dropped out. You have this very interesting backstory that I think is interesting to hear about.
No, I actually didn't study biochemistry. So I started studying economics in Germany because I thought that's what you should do when you want to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And then I did have a science scholarship on the side, which is how I met or I had two tutors. And when I met them, that's why people always associate that I did that. Like, again, so I kind of did it. I asked them, like, because I was always very curious. I think that's what life is all about, is being curious. So when I had my first tutoring session, I was like, guys, forget about the bees and the flowers. Like, what's on your mind? Like, how's biotech? This was like, we're talking about 1999. Yeah. And my question was like, how's biotech in 20 years from now? Like, what you are working on? And they started talking, like, and they had an idea, which at this moment was nothing more than an idea. I understood it vaguely because I was 20. Yeah. So I had a little bit of a concept, but like, I think my talent was always to meet or also realize when people are great, and then understanding enough to kind of have kind of a judgment call. Yeah. And I told them after that session, I was like, guys, I think what you want to do is amazing. Again, as much as I understand it, you shouldn't do that at university. This could be a multi-billion-dollar company if successful. And for whatever reason, they picked me as sort of their third co-founder. Again, I was the third wheel, so to say, in a nice way, but like I want to really always make sure that all credit goes to them for the science. But it became a very iconic biotech company. It was called Superhumans originally. It's now called Angermeyer. So that was sort of the start. And when I saw that, then for 1 year-ish, like 1.5, like I was at uni and doing this. But then when it became clear there's a big success, like I skipped university, never finished, and since then I'm really fully focused on being an entrepreneur and investor.
And since then, kind of stopped thinking so much about economics for a long time, and you really focused on biotech for a long period of time, right? That was like
at the beginning, but then I did very early already, like you could call it financial services. I always like, people are saying in a nice way, I think that's a good description of me. I'm going with the flow. I have a few in the world. I had the luck when RiboPharma became Alnylam and we IPO'd in 2004, I was really thinking, what do I want in life? Because I had more money and coming from a very normal, very, very normal family, like grew up in a 100-people village. Then we moved when I was 9 to a town with 2,000 people. And so I had more money than I would ever thought I would have. And I was like, what do I want from life? And like the two things are like, I only want to work with nice people. Sounds so simple, but like I realized, okay, I'm now in the position I don't need to work with assholes. But really, like, I think it's like, I'd say it's one of the most banal things is like your life or your happiness so much depends on like your surrounding. So that was the one takeaway I had. And then the other one was like, I really only want to invest in, build, whatever, do things which really excite me, because why would I do something boring? Yeah. So these were my two takeaways. And then I structured my life and my investment firm and everything around that two very basic ideas: nice people and good people, and doing exciting things. And then obviously now like almost or more than 25 years, sort of that evolved. Like I have a few on the world, but then within that, I kind of go with the flow, because like sometimes I think you can't force ideas, whatever. You just need, like, I love to meet people. So I'm very sort of social. And then if you talk to smart people all the time, like someone, you're going to learn something. Like, so to back to your question, I did start with biotech, but then,
let's go everywhere, dude. I want you to take it away and tell me your kind of life story up to, the investment group that you started after the IPO, what you focused on. Like, take it away, please. Don't go back to my question.
I wonder, because like I can make it like there was kind of how you call it in English, like not a break, but like an important pivot. Like I would say around 2012, 2013, when I rather decided, which was the right decision, like there is sort of the real business globally is in the US. Yeah. So I would say till 2012, sort of my investment business, which till 2012 I ran with 4 friends together. So over the years that at the beginning I sort of added, like we had like a partnership. and we were fairly focused like on Germany, like successful, but like on a sort of German scale. And then kind of we decided in a very friendly way, because like someone just things run their course, to split up in 2012. And since then, sort of Apeiron, which I renamed the holding, is my own, and I'm the sole owner, but became much more like sort of US focused, much more tech. Like, so we had an interim phase, so biotech, but then I would say 2004 till 2012, it was a lot of German financial services. Like I built up, it was a buy and build strategy, the largest IFA, independent financial advisor network. So we had 15,000 people, which we aggregated, selling financial products. That was one of the big successes in the sort of more traditional financial services space. I actually built up, again, we could talk hours. I just wanted to go more to the recent stuff, but like between 2008 and 2014, I very randomly, and I kind of jokingly say I fall into these opportunities. I built up the third largest banking group in Africa, and then we sold it successfully 2014, which was a wild ride. And so, but it was a very like, again, financial services at the early days of fintech. And then really, again, the sort of the pivot came 2012, 13, when I bought out my other 4 partners in the holding. Frankly, made it.
And you focused more on the US.
Yeah.
And why do you go away from? Why do you go away from Europe? You know, why the focus? Like, I think I know why, but I'm curious what you think.
Like, look, I love Europe. I literally just was in Germany. So my parents, like my family, actually, where I come from, I visited them. Like, it's kind of, I think we have a lot of potential. And at the moment, I'm trying to think about, I think maybe the US and some other part of us are going so crazy that suddenly Europe's boringness could have feed us by default. But it's not what we should be proud of in Europe. But like, if the world becomes too volatile, which I think it becomes, maybe Europe suddenly, again, by being boring and doing nothing, can actually get.
Well, I think his video froze.
Yeah, I think we lost him very quickly. That's a very funny.
It is a really funny point to freeze on, though, while he's calling Europe boring.
You froze for a second. You were just talking about how Europe is doing the do nothing and win strategy, which, you know, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work.
It's really awesome to be boring and win if everyone else is like spinning themselves apart. But if everyone else just keeps going up infinitely, then do nothing and win doesn't go so good.
Yeah. So I would say, but if this is all same joy, but if I would say one thing which is really frustrating, because I think Europe does have great talent, Europe does have actually great science, and I think the world is as we all know, going into that sort of real science, deep tech stuff where Europe is amazing. We really missing that kind of American audacity and drive. Like, it's really like, it's very hard. I think everybody who knows both worlds and is listening knows what I mean. And it's very hard to fully describe it, but it's just like that.
I know exactly. Yeah. So I was just speaking with some Latin American investors, and it was very funny. We were talking about how retail, it's the meme now, right? Where like every time there's a dip, actually retail are the people who come out and buy, which is like, you know, if you follow markets for a long time, it's actually very strange. Usually it's institutional buyers come out and buy when there's a dip in the market. But retail in the US is so much more scared of missing the upside than of principal protection. And you go to Europe, you go to Latin America, Asia, depends where, you go to Africa, and people really care about principal protection, and it's a different mentality. You know, people don't play to win, they play to not lose. And I think especially when you're in a business, you know, of creating new businesses like you're in tech, you're trying to do something dynamic, do something new. It's very tough with that attitude of principal protection. And that's how you end up with these funny, you know, you have these like brilliant German engineers who start a company and like they're, you know, they can barely raise $100,000 at 2 million. And you're like, if I had this same exact team, but in San Francisco, I could just multiply the valuation by 50 immediately. Right.
Yeah. But that is 100% one thing. Like, and I personal anecdote was like when I sold my Alnylam shares, literally my family and friends and everybody was like, you made it. You're not going to work in life anymore. Like, and you're going to put it on account, right? That you're going to collect your interest rates for it. I was like, what the fuck? No, like, it's just getting started.
Yeah.
But I don't know why, by the way, because there was no role model, whatever, but like I was always very American in that. Like, but also like now, even now, like I can rather lose money with an investment which goes wrong than actually missing an opportunity. Like I'm really like, that's what gives me FOMO, is missing an opportunity and not being like at the pulse of the time. But Europe is exactly what you described. It's too much of principal protection and way less risk taking. And the other thing is like, it's general ambition in general. Like in Europe, people feel they made it when they made 50 million. In America, I suppose my friend Peter Thiel told me when we became friends, like this was like 2000, whatever, 14, 13. Like he was like, it's so annoying in Europe when people make 50 million, then they like, great, like I need to protect that, my principle. I made it. Then in Silicon Valley, you're more ashamed if you made 50 million than losing it, because if you lost it, you at least tried hard and do the next thing. But like,
well, also 50 million is like the poorest rich man in San Francisco, right? Like you can buy a house, you can maybe go.
You don't want to talk about dinner, like, because you're kind of ashamed. Yeah.
Yeah, you're the poorest guy. It's so much worse. It's so much worse because people expect you to pay for things and that they don't expect you to pay when you don't have that much money, but you don't feel, it's like a real estate, like a normal house that's worth like $500,000 somewhere in America or like 250,000 somewhere in Germany is worth like $5 million in San Francisco, right? So there's this huge need to like double up and put your chips back on the table and keep going more. But yeah, I think that attitude that you talk about in Europe, it's strange because it's like affected the entire continent, right? It's not just the entrepreneurs, it's not just the politicians, it's everything. You were in Germany at the time when this was kind of solidifying, I think, at the end of the 2000s. Like what is going wrong? Why, is it just too many old people?
Cycles, I mean, there is, I think it's even kind of a crypto meme or kind of like these sort of cycle. What is it like? Hard times create great man, great man create easy times, and easy times create weak man. It's kind of true, and I think Germany had a different generation after the war. Like everything was gone, and like people had to hustle and build things, and then just came another generation. It's gonna be interesting in 20, 30 years in America. Like, will the kids of the tech titans be equally like, or is the but
we're just on an asynchronous cycle is what you're saying, right? Like America right now is,
But the one thing I think America does have something, and I don't even know how to describe it, but like it keeps that sort of entrepreneurial spirit. I think maybe it's ingrained, like that sort of it's maybe this religious thing, a lot of people who came here very, very early, were like, what is it called? The
Protestant.
But the Protestant, the sub part where is it Calvinistic? I think that's one of the wrong.
Yeah,
like,
Calvinism.
Where people believe like that the more successful you are in life, that's already a hint how much God likes you and that you're going to have a great afterlife. So people are really working hard because like,
I think it's very different. You see this like there's a lot of Catholics, right, that feel that becoming too rich is actually like very bad, right?
Yeah,
like
I think it's Calvinistic work ethic. But what I want to say is like America somehow actually avoided, hindsight so far, that trap of becoming too like lazy and whatever, and kind of is still like I sometimes I go to dinners here and they're amazing. Like again, and it's not about money, by the way. We always attach it and say, oh, billionaires, whatever. But it's more like about driven people. But like I was at like this was one thing where I was really like, even for me, it was the strike. Like some weeks ago, I was in Miami and there was like a spontaneous dinner, and at this event, there were more wealth assembled than most likely the top 50 Germans have. But that's not the point. The point was that if theoretically, it's not ever going to happen in Germany that the top 50 rich people will be the same room, because they all like very secretive and not really active anymore. But even theoretically, because the ones I know of the top 50 in Germany, they are so like, again, principal protection. While at this dinner in Miami, again, there was more wealth than the top 50 Germans have. But really, some of the richest people in the world start the conversation with, hey, what's new? What can we do? What you're looking at? What have you learned? Like, yeah, there is this kind of hunger for more, for novelty, for innovation, for driving things forward. And that is, I can only find in America.
That's what I've always thought it was. I think it's like the curiosity and the drive for novelty. Whenever I go to Europe, there's like you talk to your average person in America and they'll have some hobby that they've gone deeply, like even a totally random person who works like a W-2 job, they're an otherwise very average person, and they will know all about whatever their hobby is, right? Like maybe they're a car guy, right? And they know all about like inline four motors versus V6s versus V8s and like how to adjust the timing and like all of these mechanical mechanisms. And then you go and you talk to the equivalent average person in Europe somewhere, and they're like, yeah, I don't know, I like this one. It's fuel efficient. And that's about the extent of their knowledge or where their hobby takes them, I guess. It just seems like there's something in America that causes everyone to get really like rabbit holey about stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, America's the country of extremes, right? You have like the fattest people, the fittest people, the smartest people, the dumbest people, the nicest people, the most evil. Like you
The
have
biggest
extremes of all
assholes in the
kind.
universe.
Yeah, you have extremes of all kind, and people often say like, oh, I like America, and it's like you don't like, oh, you like New York or you like Miami or you like San Francisco or Texas. Like these are all very, very different things, and I think it's something that's also very
Person
powerful is
healthy
that
in
you.
itself because they again, for example, and by the way, there is also, I don't want to always just shit on Europe, but like maybe for the times, like for example, if you take the German political system, it was built. That's what I always tell my American friends if they at the moment are like, oh, why is Germany not reforming whatever? Because like I was like, you Americans, because after our missteps, yeah, in the last century, yeah, you gave us a constitution which is literally designed to prevent big change.
Designed to deadlock.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's designed
exactly.
to deadlock.
So,
it's like
and
the
that's
Japanese one.
where now, like while the American system is exactly, and also the outcome of it is exactly what you say. It's actually designed for swings. Like you have Democrats and you have Republicans, and yes, it goes fairly, yeah. But that's what keeps the country on its toes and like innovative, whatever.
When the American government was started, it was thought of as an experiment, right? Which is this crazy thing to say, like, oh, people are going to live here, and our main system of government and of political organization is going to be an experiment. It's a very crazy thing to say, particularly for someone in Europe. Which again, it's the principal protection, and in Europe, it's more about making sure bad things don't happen. And I think in America, it's how do we make sure good things happen? And if some mistake gets made, I think that's the thing. I think failure gets penalized a lot more in Europe.
Yeah, like
if you screw something up, it's really bad. In the U.S. you have the
you can
WeWork
fail
guys.
upwards in the U.S.
You can fail upwards in the U.S. Like you can fail, and if you fail in the right way, people will actually bet on you even harder.
Yeah, because you learned it.
Because they think you learned, and they think you have some secret sauce that managed to convince people, and actually it's bullish that you screwed all these stupid things up, but you almost made it anyways. And if you just if you're a little wiser, you do something a little different, you can do great. So that's a little bit on Europe. I will say for Europe, I think there's a lot of brilliant young talent in Europe that doesn't like what Europe is. If you were 20, 25 years old today, what would you do? Would you like immediately get on the first plane to America or to Asia? Would you like, what do you think you would do? I think it's very different. I always think this is an interesting question.
Yeah, no, by the way, I thinking about exactly that a lot because I didn't fully do it. Like, yes, I focused a lot on the US, but I still have my foothold in Europe. Like, I'm kind of in between the worlds and never moved to the US fully. Like, I have an apartment here. I'm here regularly. But like, I'm not a resident. Like, I also didn't want to get thrown in the US tax system. So
yeah, I was gonna say, are we gonna talk about that part about it?
Yeah, so, but I never know if you never know, and I also think you shouldn't beat yourself up with too much hindsight analysis because, knock on wood, my life went amazing. But sometimes I think if I would have fully moved here when I was 25 and immersed in that world even more, maybe it would have been even more like. But I do have. Look, I love Germany. Yeah, I love my parents. Like, we're still very close. I love my family. Like, I didn't fully. This was this emotional thing. I didn't want to fully leave it behind. So, but maybe also like that's how I like to see it. Like this sort of going in between the worlds. You can also learn the best from everything, and like so whatever it is. But like, I think like it's really a hard question because I also like actually, I think there is no answer. That is maybe the better way to because like if I look at the world, I think we're gonna have an sorry, like I do not know. I'm in tech, but I do not know how to. I do not know how to switch off my WhatsApp ringtone.
You're okay, no worries.
And it's on my desktop. So I think the world will be so extremely volatile that there is almost no definite answer to the question, where should you live? What should you do? The answer is you always need to be on the move. Yeah. And you need to be flexible, because I think what is true today in the world we're going can already be wrong or different in 2 years from now. By the way, that is, I think, very distressing for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always like that kind of flexibility. I have several homes and whatever, but even I start feeling that sort of the world we're creating and that tremendous velocity is kind of taking a little bit of a toll. And if it's taking a toll on me, who loves innovation and novelty and velocity, then I know it's going to take a toll on billions of people. But that's the true answer for every younger person listening. You cannot make a different choice anymore. You need to always be flexible and reassess practically your assumptions every month. Yeah.
We'll jump right back into it. So, okay, the world's changing a lot. There's less stability. I think we've talked about this a lot, where I think people want more stability more than ever, and they have it much
and
less.
And it's the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I'm wondering about. So you were saying that you have to have your eyes peeled, check out the options across every single avenue here. Do you think, though, that even in the most ridiculous places, I tend to think that there's usually some arb in even like a place where you would say never move here, right? Like if you were to think of the most stagnant country, the most useless people of all time, I think there's still a chance that if you really dig in and find something, you can do well there.
Well, yes. So in absolute terms, I would say a great entrepreneur can make it everywhere and can make a successful venture outcome everywhere. However, like obviously, in the moment you're a great entrepreneur, you want to have the best outcome possible. And you also want to have the best, let's call it IRR, or like the best return for your time and effort and everything. And I think there is clear the rule. At the moment, it's America, where you get sort of the best bucks for your passion and for your life practically invested. Like I give you one example, and I said it with all the love because it's actually still one of my favorite ever ventures. It's like I learned a lot. Like I can always take it so we built up from 2008 to 2014 from scratch. It was a buy and build story, so it was not organically. So we practically bought always the leading local bank in African countries and practically formed like these.
Sorry, where did you go? Did you go North Africa, West?
We started in East Africa. I can tell this the start story, but I want to come back to the conclusion. The start story was like one of my dear friends now, and we were about to become friends, just had met back then. One of the most amazing human beings out there, one of the most amazing, if not the most amazing politician and leader I've ever met, is the president of Rwanda. We could talk an hour only about him, how amazing he is, because like he stopped the genocide, a full-blown, not a small war, it was a full-blown genocide. One of the most horrible things I think I ever met that happened in recent human history. He stopped it, and he said one sentence, but there's so much more to him, and he didn't choose revenge, which, by the way, if you go in details, it's very easy to say that's the right thing to do. But like, I thought a lot what I would have done in his shoes. You're the winner. Just stop the genocide where 1 million people of your side were killed. And family members, like there's not just the numbers, there's the person. I think I would have chosen revenge. I was always very honest with it. So he did not. And no, it's like if you think about it, if somebody would kill my parents, like
I think you're right. I think that's a very human response. But I think most people are not honest with themselves, and they want to. It's very hard to actually imagine, like, what would I do if multiple people that I know were killed in these horrific ways? It's obviously just very funny for you to be like, I would.
No, like my family and everything. Like I just thought about it a lot, and but this makes me admire him even more. But it's to the point. But then he built up this unbelievably cool country by actually reuniting the country, and like it's a whole like so. But so the point was like I became friends with him. And he's also always very like, he wants to make Rwanda is literally like the Singapore of Africa. Yeah, no crime, no corruption, steady growth, very tech focused, very service focused. So at one of your friends was like, oh, you're a successful entrepreneur in Germany. Like, you should do something here because you always want to draw in talent and investors and whatever. And that, as I said before, was the time when I did a lot of financial services and banking. I owned a fully commercial bank in Germany. And I was like, well, what's happening here? And I looked at the privatizations the government was doing, and there was this small bank, and I literally got carried away. It sounded like it was a small bank, but I came home to my colleagues back then. It was like, guys, I bought a bank in Rwanda, and they were like, what the fuck? Yeah. So, and then though the president was pushing me, I was like, well, but like, I expect you to really grow on that. And like, sort of, I was like, okay, like, who could run that bank in Rwanda? And I found a now very dear friend, like, who actually I was about to hire as CEO of the German commercial bank. So I called this guy. He was in a big consultancy. Was like, listen, the good news is you made this. You're the one. I would make you an offer to be the CEO of a German bank, but how about you become the CEO of a Rwandese bank? Yeah. And the guy
so this guy went from the most boring job ever.
Yes.
He's like a consultant at BCG or something.
Yeah,
and then it's like, all right, man, get on a plane to fucking Rwanda.
Yeah.
What did he say? Did he say yes right away?
He said, look, it turned out he was also a very adventurous and curious person. So he was like, let's go there together. I'm not saying no, I'm not saying yes, obviously. Like, I want to see it. So, and then he came back, and that's where I say I always fall in these opportunities. He said, listen, again, shorten everything. It was like, I'm not going to run only a bank in Rwanda. Yeah. But there is a lot of opportunity in banking in Africa. So if you give me a bigger mandate, if we have a bigger vision, I'm actually up for it. And then we developed sort of this idea of buying in other countries, always the leading local bank, sort of assembling it.
Funny.
And
that's like someone gets you a gift, like someone buys you like an entry-level fishing rod for your birthday, and then you're like, oh, now I gotta go fishing with my friend. Now you just bought the whole crew fishing rods, except you just bought like multiple banks all over Africa.
So, but what I would say, so the kind of mistake is the wrong word, but where it went, and again, it was very successful, but like, I had to realize sort of the kind of seductive thing was like, starting in Rwanda gives you a too easy feeling, because again, Rwanda is so, it's like Singapore, like, again, no corruption, da, 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 da. And when we came to other countries, we're like, fuck. So Africa sometimes, in some places, because Africa is obviously not a country, yeah, has also places which are not as easy. And we fought through it, Dirk and I, big shout out to Dirk. Yeah, and we built I think remember $400 million we sold it. So we made good money for us and our investors. And I learned a lot. That's why I wouldn't want to miss it. But coming to your point, if I look back, yes, look, as we had an edge. Yeah, we did it well. So even in a place like Africa, but like, we had to put in so much energy. And then it was only 400 million. So if I would say my time, effort,
waste of time,
energy,
400 million
performance was actually not good, because I had to put in so much to get to 400 million. Yeah. And if I had put in the same energy and passion, everything in America, then it would have been like a 4 billion business. So again, still, I learned a lot. It was amazing. But I don't want to, I do think, like, I think it's Balaji who says these things. What is the sentence? Like, the three most important and almost only things matter is whom you marry, or whom you surround, let's make it broader, whom you surround yourself with, where do you live, and what do you do? That's the three decisions in your life, which I think determine 90% of the outcome. So why would you go to a place? Yes, your point, I think a great entrepreneur can make it everywhere. But like, why would you pick deliberately?
Make it harder. Yeah, why would you make it harder for yourself?
Yeah.
So was there anything about buying an African bank that was it easier, more appealing? Like, is this like a lower barrier to entry, I assume, than doing the same thing in the US? Like, that's my assumption. Is the reason that it's there is because...
I think, again, Rwanda spoiled us too much, because they're very efficient. They have but then Africa is like, they're all more cumbersome than in the US. That's the point. Like, I sometimes think, like, that I told that at many conferences, and it's like, I don't want to sound condescending, but like, if you are not, you said it's a politically incorrect podcast. If you're not the most pretty girl in the world, then fucking try hard to be pleasing or whatever. Like not be ugly, and
Oh,
then
we're
make
so much more
smart.
politically incorrect than that, sir. Like
Okay,
far, far
that
worse.
is a
Yeah.
little bit something.
You can admit that we've got to shoot them with the GLP-1 blow darts, man. You
Right
can
now,
admit.
we can. But like, we should
We had a whole episode where we had a presidential candidate of Brazil on, and we talked about how we're going to save society by force dosing everyone with GLP-3s. So just in
As
the
like a
water
state
supply.
policy, yeah. Just say like this has become too big of a burden on all of our healthcare policies. We've got to get those numbers down. Like these BMIs, they're just too high.
But I mean, I can give you. It's so funny that you say that now, because that's one of my favorite anecdotes, or more anecdotes, like how Rwanda does it so well, and how absurd some of these, whatever you call it, woke but good doers who always like.
Yeah, they're well-meaning, but like always manage to
throwing
fuck it up.
having the moral high ground, like maybe not on GLP-1s, GLP-3s, but like take HIV in Africa, which is still, by the way, many places a huge problem. Yeah, Rwanda realized that, by the way, and just one thing is like HIV is an individual problem, obviously, because people are, if they're not treated, are dying very early. But then it becomes, by that, if you go to some countries, it becomes also like a societal problem, because if you have a society where sort of your young people die very early, then companies decide not to invest in them anymore. It becomes an educational problem. Like there's, again, beyond the individual tragedy, there's a huge ripple effect. So there is actually kind of a solution, is like if you would put, it's just like simplified speaking, not scientific, but this was a provocative idea. If you would put a country on, there's PrEP, like so there are certain HIV medications, if people take them, they can't get it even if they get exposed. And additionally, if people are properly on meds, the probability that they give it is very, very low. So you can actually, if you look at the sort of viral, like it's the same what we always discussed in COVID, like you need to sort of stop the cycle. Yeah. And then somewhere a viral infection would run its course and sort of run out. Yeah. And very early, always, again, not fully meant seriously, it was like, why don't you put HIV medications in the water? Yeah. But out of that, Rwanda developed a very thorough system where they push their people to get tested a lot, which a lot of people criticize because they're like, oh no, like people can't be pushed to get tested. But like, it's not that these people get stigmatized in any way when they would have HIV, then they would get an education and would say, listen, it's totally fine if you take your medication, here is your free medication. So, and by doing that, so very pushy, thing to push their population into regular testing, but then again, not stigmatizing the people, but supporting them and giving them the meds and explaining them if they take the meds regularly, that means they can't give it, Rwanda actually broke that cycle and has practically HIV rates now, I think, like Europe, while the neighboring countries are a disaster. So there is something in like, but that is like, I'm always like, I have many things actually like the same when we come to enhancements, whatever, where I'm always like torn between sometimes what should governments do when they're good? Yeah. But then obviously as a more like crypto loving person, also like I'm more like on the libertarian side, we don't want too much. So it's like, and the problem is always
you go back and forth.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard to find the balance between state capacity and, you don't want an infringing state. It's very hard. I often think that part of the problem here is that we have the worst of both worlds, right? We can imagine like you have a competent aligned state, you have a state where they want what's good for the people and they're competent and they have state power. And then you have, an incompetent state that, okay, but they're not very powerful. Okay, these people aren't good. They maybe don't want what's good for you, but they're not very powerful. But a lot of times we have the worst of all worlds, which is like, you have this state that's very spiky, in some areas has a lot of capacity, and they're not very aligned, they're not very intelligent, they haven't thought through what they're doing, and it's very difficult. A lot of times we have, I think, the worst of all worlds, on a lot of topics.
Like, I think a lot of people, especially in crypto, come to the conclusion, even if you have positive examples, like it's net better to have less states. I'm not in the zero state camp. I think there needs to be basic things which needs to be regulated as society, but like an over infringing state is mostly negative.
I think what I think a lot of times is you can't have a very libertarian state and then also have a very strong safety net, right? Like either you can go take whatever drug you want or you can be on Medicare. But like if you go take whatever drug you want, okay, then someone else, your neighbor, shouldn't have to pay for it if something crazy happens to you necessarily, right? Like, I think, for example, Matt Levine of Bloomberg has this great idea, which is like, okay, we have too much securities regulation, right? If people want to invest early in startups, they're not even allowed to in the United States. It's very prohibitive, et cetera. And people say, oh, this is horrible. But then what happens is they invest in something, they lose a bunch of money, and then they go cry to the regulator and they say, oh, why didn't you stop me from doing this, right? And so one of his proposals is like a big, scary red sheet of paper that says, like, I agree that I'm investing in this, and if I lose my money and I go cry about it, I'm like a huge loser. Like, I'm a massive loser, and I can't cry about this. And then you sign that, and you have to like take a photo next to it. So that way, if you go cry to the SEC, oh, I shouldn't have been allowed to invest in Theranos or WeWork or whatever. It's like, dude, you signed the piece of paper. Like, you can't have it both ways.
Because I had a deal like that. Actually, a friend of mine did it I was involved, like with one of his best friends, and like the third guy wanted to sell, we need money, like a stake in a company to the friend of mine, and the friend of mine and I both knew this is the deal of a lifetime for him. So he bought it, but he had the seller sign a piece of paper. I'm an idiot. I'm selling now. I should not sell now. I would never. It's exactly that. I will never cry. I will never complain. He did complain.
Like 3 years later from now, when this company's worth 10 times what I sold it for. Yeah.
Right, but that comes like if we go to like, because you already alluded to it, to enhanced games, but performance enhancing drugs, enhancement. It's exactly my point is actually people should be allowed to make their own decisions, but only if they have informed consent. Because you need to know what you're doing. So that's why, for example, when it comes to performance enhancing drugs, both for athletes, but in general for like peptides, whatever, it's like, I believe you need to do it with a doctor together, because your body's complex. And I would say 99% of the people have not the knowledge, the time, by the way, the tools to fully understand it. So, but if it's FDA approved, because that's a gold standard, like if something's FDA approved, we know what the drug does, we know risks, if any. Yeah. And if you do an FDA, or if you use an FDA approved substance with your doctor together, then I would call that informed consent. But then you should be allowed to use FDA approved drugs for whatever you want to use it for, not just for that narrow use case they might have been originally. One sentence, and then we can go to other topics, because like I want people to take things away. And the number one simple and hardest thing to have like healthy, long, and like enhanced life is actually discipline. Because a lot of it's not you guys, but like a lot of journalists are like, oh, is this all just rich people can afford? I said, no, it's actually, the hard truth is the one thing which everybody can afford would be discipline, which is sort of giving you a lot of power.
You would think so.
So, and there are 5 things. It's not things you need to buy. It's 5 free things. Which is, by the way, the biggest. If you don't do that, like, and I understand why you asked me, like, and but when we talk about enhancements, we're talking about like 20-30% of the equation. And I tell everybody before you
a lot of it is getting the basic stuff right.
And
right. And like, this is the gym thing.
Yeah.
Right. You can be the guy at the gym
if you don't get the basics right. And the basics are 5 things.
Yeah.
Number 1 is sleep. Yeah. You need to sleep. And by the way, yes, you need to sleep obviously properly, but most importantly, to take time for sleep. I'm very honest. I think friends would say I'm really hardworking, but the one thing I have no shame of saying, like, I take my time for sleep. These bullshit, like, especially what you see investment banks, whatever, oh, let's do an all-nighter. I was always like, hell no. Like, again, look at the picture. Like, why would somebody do that? Like, why would you make your employees do that? And the biggest luxury I have, I try to structure my life and my travel, everything. I don't wake up with an alarm clock, because my body can take as much as it needs in that moment. Yeah. So I always do meals, whatever, in the morning. Like, so, but my team knows, like, let's not start too early, because like I would just not wake up also. Like, I don't wake up with an alarm. Second is, by the way, I think very romantic, kind of very cheesy, but true. Equally important in sleep is social relations. Loneliness is one of the biggest death factors. By the way, again, it's always connected. Like, if you don't have muscles, you can't like really go. Anyway, loneliness, have a social relationship, have friends, go out, enjoy life, spend your time with people you love, and surround yourself with people you love, and have people you love. The third one is diet. Just no sugar, no bad carbs, Mediterranean diet. Don't be a slave. I'm not following any of the crazy. I'm just like, eat healthy, fresh fruit, good mix, a lot of vegetable stuff like that. The fourth one is my favorite. Do not drink alcohol. By the way, the funny thing is, you can't imagine how many people have scolded me and tried to berate me over the last 10 years about psychedelics and performance-enhancing drugs while drinking alcohol at a dinner. And I'm like, I tell anybody out there, every journalist, every scientist who says bullshit about enhancement drugs, as long as you drink alcohol, you kind of even not credible to talk about that. Biggest poison out there, should never be legal. Yeah. The obsession our society has with alcohol is such a shame. And nobody's talking about that.
And you realize it immediately as soon as you start lifting weights or something like that, because it's actually like, it's totally impossible to make meaningful progress in the gym if you have one drink a day. Like, it just erases everything, right? You can go and you can spend 3 hours in the gym, you can manage your diet, all this stuff, and then you have one fucking drink at the end of the day and just zero, nothing happens.
And then very proud, I never tried alcohol in my whole life. I think it's medically poison, and it's eventually the path to hell. That's my view on alcohol. And by the way, obviously, don't do any other bad drugs. And by the way, I mean all the drugs which you colloquially see as recreational drugs, I believe are bad. Psychedelics are no recreational drugs, they're medical drugs. Enhancements are medical drugs, but like all that bad stuff, don't do it. And then, by the way, the fifth one is do regular checkups. Yeah, you can so much in your life, you can either prevent, or if you catch it in the early days, you can really cure today if you catch it early. But so many people are like, when they're in their 40s, 50s, and I talk, I don't want to do a colonoscopy, do it. Yeah, because actually, if you look at the statistics, again, I'm always coming back, data. The main drivers of early mortality are either an accident or cardiovascular disease or cancer. Everything else is niche or comes later. So, and you can do so much with prevention if you do regular screenings for cancer and cardiovascular problems.
If you catch things earlier, like anything that you catch earlier is easier. Probably everyone should get blood work done.
I do a blood work.
There's like niche things.
Do a blood work every
There's niche things, like if you're a guy, you should probably donate some blood or do a contact sport, Are
you going to actually, through Enhanced Games, are you guys going to offer telehealth blood work services? Like, are you going to be able to ship your sample off to some lab, you guys analyze it and give?
No, we have to, because you need it for example, so you have to have it in your protocol to have it.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a very interesting age of that. We were just talking about this with Lucas the other day, that like many doctors are great, right? There's a lot of great doctors, and there's doctors that I know that I highly respect. There's also a lot of doctors that are glorified, regulatory barriers and checklists that basically look at your symptoms and have memorized 5 or so responses. And then it also depends on the medical system, but in a lot of medical systems, it's like you have a doctor you talk to, like, oh, you have a cardiovascular problem, but you can't go to a cardiovascular doctor. First, you have to go to a normal doctor, a general doctor, and then he says, okay, you can go talk to this person, right? And so I think we're in an interesting era where, this kind of ties earlier to what we were saying in the conversation. There's great things about this administration. I think one of the things is there's a lot of areas that people aren't looking at where they're willing to try new things.
Yeah.
And one is like RFK and the health sector, and I'm sure they'll make mistakes. But again, that's the American attitude of like, I'm more scared of missing out on something great that's new than I am about always worrying and always being conservative, like small c conservative, and worrying about principal protection. Right? It's kind of a different mentality.
You got away what nobody's talking about. You're right. I just want to rephrase it, because people could almost use it as an argument again. So, the current administration is lowering hurdles, whatever. Like, what people don't see is that if the hurdles are too high and if drug development takes too long, how many lives does it cost when a cancer drug which works comes to the market 2 years later?
This is like Elon, right? It's like the self-driving cars, right? A self-driving car has a freak accident, kills one person. Okay, great. How much does a human driving car kill over the same amount of miles? And it's like Elon has probably saved tens of thousands of lives, right? You could just run the numbers on this. It's not that hard. You look at the data, anyone who thinks about it. And so, there's one that morally, maybe you see a car that has an accident and God forbid it happens to someone obviously that can be very hard emotionally. But we could be better than that. We can think, okay, look at the data, what actually happens. Absolutely. I wanted to ask you a couple sillier questions.
Wait. Before the sillier questions, I want to get in. You just gave a 5-point list here on things that you can do, like your top 5 things that can basically change your life. We talked about the importance of dedication. I want to just clarify, like the average person does not have as much dedication as Christian here. So you should not try and go through and do all 5. Like you shouldn't fix all 5 of these things at once. You'll go crazy. You'll stop your attempt to self-help yourself basically instantly. You basically have to pick one thing that you want to change. Make sure that is now, like you've now embedded a habit, right? You have something good going on here. And then after it's normal for you, you can move on to the next. And then if you just keep doing this year over year, eventually you appear to have monstrous dedication that appeared out of nowhere, right? If you try to change everything at once, you wind up like the New Year's resolutioners that go in and then they just leave the gym.
Yeah, you always see them in January.
It's the power of slow, gradual, but steady compound.
It's consistency. It's consistency, right? Like I always say this. There's certain activities in life where people are always trying to think, is this exercise 2% better than, should I do this dumbbell exercise for my biceps or that one? And it's like, whichever one you're choosing is 98% better than not doing anything.
Yeah.
Right? Like what matters is doing anything. And it's such a low bar. Like the returns diminish so quickly that Christian has a lot more capital and a lot more specialists. You can get 90% of what Christian is getting by just sleeping, eating right, not eating a bunch of garbage, having friends, not drinking a bunch of alcohol.
The number one easy thing. Like if I would say, if anybody listens now, they want to start with one thing, kick out alcohol. It's going to be life-changing.
I'm going to be honest, man. I'm going to do the moderate position here. What I do
disgusting.
is I drink alcohol. I very much, I use it very mindfully. So for me, it's like, I'm choosing, like, it's not a default. It's not like, I'm with friends. I always drink. I think there's people, and then I do think it's like very strange. For some people, it's culturally normal. I think it's weird to just drink on your own. I think that's weird. I've never understood that. I always view it as like a social lubricant. You're on a first date with a girl or something, and everything in life is a cost-benefit analysis. I think I believe in being healthy. I also believe that I live my life to live my life. I don't live my life to be healthy, right? And so maybe that's a little different. Like my optimal point maybe is different than yours or Lucas's or whoever's listening to the podcast. But I think I'm healthy.
Let me say the nicest thing I can say about alcohol for the ones who want a little bit of a better feeling. It is a poison. You shouldn't do it. However, it is a social lubricant. That is the one good thing with alcohol. So, and actually, I deliberately chose the sequence, like sleep number 1, social relations number 2, alcohol number 3, good food, checkup, and sport. I forgot sport, by the way, so it's 6. But if you only have the choice to be social and have a lot of friends and fun with a little bit of alcohol, then this conscious decision to do something which is poisonous is actually okay in my view, because social relations and having fun in life and being happy is so important. You should just be aware which you are. That
I think be mindful, right? Like if you're going to eat something that's bad for you, life is about enjoying life as well, right? If you want to eat a cookie, you want to have some ice cream, whatever, great, go have that. If you really like whiskey. That's what I
said before with food. I never and by the way, also a very big shout out because he's just going through all of that in a positive way. And one of the coolest guys out there is Brian Johnson. He's this living experiment. He's, by the way, he's going to be one of the top presenters of the live stream of the enhanced games and everything. But I always told him, Brian, you need to remember one thing. You're doing everything right. And by the way, I learned so much from him. but you need to enjoy life. And at the now of the era, like recently he discovered psychedelics and suddenly he's loosening up a little bit.
I was gonna say he's been having a lot of fun recently.
Yeah,
That might have
he's
been
been having
you.
a lot
That
of
might
fun
be
on
on
Twitter
you.
recently.
But now, by the way, now I think he's going to be really the healthiest person in the world because now he has all the power, he's doing all the right things, and he's still very, very disciplined. But he added sort of that tiny bit of fun and easygoing. Yeah, I think that's the right formula in life.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of
Okay,
Brian
one
Johnson having
question.
fun on speaking of Brian Johnson having fun on Twitter, which he's been getting very loose with the tweets, which has been funny to see. I think one of the like do you use Twitter a lot? Are you in group chats? Like, what are you consuming? Do you like where are you sourcing interesting people? Because one of the things I care the most about, and like when we started this podcast, is I really enjoy the thing I enjoy most in life is meeting interesting people and having interesting conversations. Like
Same.
I would do this if I had no sponsors. I would do this if we weren't recording it. Obviously, don't tell our sponsors that. Cut that part. But like I really do enjoy this. And so I'm curious, like, how do you use that? The other day I was at a dinner with a bunch of, really, like you said, like really well off people, whatnot. And one of them started talking about, oh, like CNN was saying this or whatever. And I was like, okay, wait a second. And the average age of the table was like 60. Like these were older people. It's like, how many of you actually watch TV, like CNN or Fox, for something that's like you're not watching sports on TV? Besides sports, like, does anyone actually watch these things? And no one, I think, actually watches these things. It's like, it's actually impressive. I think all of the culture nowadays is downstream of the internet and of very niche places on the internet that like seem crazy, but then it kind of filters down. I'm always curious about this take, especially from people who have access to a bunch of different spaces.
No, look. So if the question is like, how do I get ideas and meet new people? First of all, I agree with you. Like, I think it's definitely not mainstream media, whatever, because like it's already at the end, it's like filtered, it's too much political correctness, all of that together, not even in a biased way. It's just like, it's just filtered down because everybody's so worried to make a stand, to have so that is a great thing in Twitter. Like, by the way, I was just thinking like, because it's semi-scientific because like it's not an FDA approved drug, but it's for me. I made the decision like there is one cool guy on Twitter. He's doing all of these like performance enhancement things, and it's a drug actually which is approved in Russia, Ukraine, and Georgia. Yeah, so it is an approved drug just in Europe. Sorry, no, yes. So, but he was really talking about it a lot, and then I looked at it. It's called Promethane. Hopefully, spell it right or pronounce it right. And now I'm trying it out because like I was like, this guy has something, and it's a very subculture on Twitter. So I think yes, so Twitter
That's
is
the one that people like taking alongside the like modafinil and adrofinil and stuff, right?
But the number one drug I love is modafinil. Modafinil is my mental performance enhancing drugs. Like it gives me 14 hours.
Do you take this all the time? Do you take this on work days when you need a boost?
When I feel it, like when I know, okay, like it's also for me like actually traveling is one big occasion when I go jet lags, like, but also when I know like I have an important day, and it's much also cleaner and better than actually coffee. Like so again, and fully FDA approved. Like we know it's out for decades. It was one actually. It was funny, so full circle. I can tell one anecdote which you gotta like because it's exactly the discussion we have here. Like how I came to psychedelics. I always come back to psychedelics. So it was a birthday party in 2013. And I hate with alcohol, not just that it's so poisonous, but that it's practically, it's shilled, or like another, what's it called? That it's shilled and kind of forced upon us permanently. And we don't even realize it. I think if you're not like me, I made the conscious decision for many reasons when I was 14, because in Bavaria, that's when you start drinking heavily, to never touch it. And then I realized how hard that is, not just because it's like pushed on you, and I hate it. I'm actually a very free spirit, like again, a very libertarian, and that made me hate alcohol even more. Yeah, when people try to,
and you need an excuse when people start drinking. If you want to say no, they're fine if you give them an excuse like, oh yeah, sorry, like I was an alcoholic, I just don't want to. Then they're fine, right? But if you don't have a reason, you're just like, yeah, I don't want to do it. they all have this sense that you think that they're like you're judging them, right? That you think that they're doing the wrong thing. And so they kind of get mad at you and try to like force you into doing the thing.
And by the way, it's funny. Everything you say brings me tonight. I want to obviously, like, I think people hopefully like anecdotes, like a little bit like to see my thing. Like, I come back to the birthday party because like even way back, why I didn't do alcohol when I was 14 had the reason. So I'm gay. I always knew I'm gay, but like I don't like this victim culture. I was sitting there with 14 in the middle of nowhere in Bavaria, and I was like, it's gonna be a shit show here if I came out, because there was no other gay person. And I always had these kind of entrepreneur investor mindset. I looked at the situation. I was like, okay, if I come out, my life is destroyed. Yeah, in school, but there is nobody I want to have or can have sex with because there are no other gay people. So no upside. If you're thinking, I see, what do you think? Look, if it would
the
have
rational approach,
the rational case for staying in the closet.
But if it would have been like in, I don't know, in all these high school romances, the other hot guy, hell yeah, but there was nobody. So I was like, why would I do something which only has
everyone in Bavaria was chopped.
No.
If you are Christian Angermeyer's high school classmate, he's calling you mid. That's what he's saying.
No, I'm saying that nobody would say. Anyway, like, no one, because I'm friends with a lot of them. They gotta listen. So, there was nobody I could have had sex with or wanted to have sex with. And hence I was like, nah, that's not gonna do it. So that's not gonna come out. But then I needed, by the way, and this is a very good story also, I'm so much believing in positive thinking and that your thoughts and like your narrative about yourself. I think the biggest superpower we have, forget about everything, about physical and housework, but the biggest superpower we have, which is the most underrated one, is like we're storytellers. And we're mostly not storytellers to the outside world, we're storytellers to ourselves. And the stories we tell about ourselves to ourselves become reality. And I saw it.
Dude, I'm such a big believer in this, man.
Yeah, but I saw it firsthand because what happened is I was a good student in high school, but not the best. And suddenly I had to think about, I cannot drink alcohol for the number one reason, I'm going to spill it. I knew it. If I get drunk, I'm going to spill it that I'm gay. Because that obviously was on a 14-year-old mind. It sounds much easier than it was. I was like panicking. What is it like? So I decided I cannot drink alcohol because I would spill it. So I needed a storyline. So the storyline I came up with was like, okay, it was already good. I came up with, I want to be the best. I was actually lazy, but I had to say something. So I came up with, because like people would have asked, because I think I was popular. Like, yeah, I was not ugly. Like there was the question coming, why are you not having a girlfriend? It was foreseeing that question. I came. So my answer was, no, I want to be the best student in Bavaria and I have no time for a girlfriend. And you know what happened? Because I had more time than all the others because I didn't date and I needed to do something. So I started learning. I started enjoying it. I liked really high school. I loved it. I really, really loved it. And I became one of the top students in Bavaria. So that fact gave me the scholarship, and the scholarship made me meet these two guys with whom I started to go farmer. So I tell everybody, if I wouldn't have been gay, I would have dated the shit out of my teens. I would have a total different life. No, but I would have been okay as well. But I wouldn't sit here. I would be more normal because I would have focused on other things. But like being gay made me focus on performance, to have a shield. By the way, it's also this whole story. I believe in like you want it. I always thought like, if I'm the best, like, and if you ever came out, like I have a shield to protect me because people like me for my performance. So I became very, very sort of addicted in a certain way to being the best and performing because that was a shield for the 15-year-old Christian. Yeah. But also I had the time and whatever. And that's how we ended up here. But back to the birthday party. I was sitting there and the birthday person said, hey, drink a glass of alcohol or a glass of champagne. You're not going to die. And I hate this. Like, it rarely happens now. So then he made the comment though, again, and I believe in these kind of spiritual coincidences. He's like, oh, there is, by the way, another friend. He's the number one neuroscientist in Germany. And he can tell you that you can drink a glass of champagne with me and not die. And I was like, okay, stupid. I know that obviously there's other reasons why I don't want to do it. But I like to meet this person. Big shout out, Rainer Spannagel, professor, best neuroscientist, one of the best neuroscientists in the world. And I sat down and I wanted to be provocative because I was in a kind of grumpy mood because I got pushed into that. And I was like, listen, I'm an investor, an entrepreneur. I look at the world, what I just said in my youth as well. I look at the world in time for upside and downsides. Why don't we go through all the drugs? If you want to talk, let's go through all the drugs and you tell me why people do it. Why do people do crystal meth, whatever? Yeah, and you tell me the upside, because there must be a reason. As I said, there's a reason why people do alcohol. There is a reason why people do all of that. And then I want to know the downside. And then this guy did one thing. I will love him forever. And everybody who's watching, if you do one thing, do it now. Go online and Google the word David, and then Nutt, Nutt, and then chart. So this friend of mine referred to, who's now a friend of mine as well, Professor David Nutt, who in like 2010 roundabout wrote a book, and the chart is sort of the outtake of the book, where he for the very first time analyzed the downside of recreational drugs. Because we're using the word risk in such an uneducated and non-thoughtful way. Oh, this is risky, this is not risky. What does it mean, actually? Like, if we talk about risk in financial terms, you can talk about it, drawdowns, volatility, whatever. And David did this great book, but again, only look at the chart. And he made it, it's a Lancet published research paper. So there is no room for interpretation. Again, this is like facts. And he made till to date, the most sort of accepted formula for measuring risk for recreational drugs. But the outcome is that alcohol, by far, scientifically, is the number one risky drug, closely followed by heroin, which people normally think is the most risky one. And then comes everything which is shit. Do not do anything of those. And I went with Rainer on that evening and said, still tell me what they do. And I can tell you, unless you have a very bizarre view on life, there is no bad drug. That's coming to the very early part of our podcast where this one other looksmaxer mentioned crystal meth. No. They have some upsides, but the downsides are massive and not worth it. And then at the end of the evening, which was the most life-changing dinner I ever had, if you would ask me now, looking back 48 years, what was the single most life-changing moment, it was this dinner. Because at the end of the dinner, or the discussion, Rainer said, now look at to the right of the chart. What has practically no risk and a tremendous amount of upside, which is psychedelics. And I was, hell no. Because again, I was this person who was like, I'm not going to do ever any recreational drug. But that was the first time I heard about psychedelics. And then Rainer told me all about it, like how psychedelics got like sort of, although they were medical drugs for pure political reasons, they became illegal, should have never been. And again, factually have very, very low risk and have the tremendous upside of potentially curing mental health issues. And at that evening, and he was like, this is what you should really do. Okay, this is what you should do. I was like, oh my God. By the way, I was in a totally different mindset. I didn't know about psychedelics. I was like, they're illegal. Like, this is yet. So, but I really owe it to Rainer. He educated me over a year. By the way, I'm not a quick mover. Like sometimes people are like, oh, Christian is so adventurous. No, I needed a year. I read all the studies from the last century. And then I was like, actually, then I was still like, hey, yes, I can see that the truth in that, but I don't need more of the upside, because the upside is they make you happier, very simplified said. And I'm always happy. That is the one thing I love my parents for the most. Like, they brought me up in a way, whatever they did, but like my baseline is happy. I have bad days, but like, I'm like, life is amazing. Humans are actually good. Like, they're bad individuals. Let's try to avoid them. But like, I have a very positive view on life, on myself, on everything. So I was like, I don't need psychedelics. Like, maybe there are people who need to be happier. I don't need to. And then I have two other friends, so they need to credit them as well, Julian and Landon. And we were in the Caribbean in the holiday, and they had homegrown mushrooms. And they were really gently saying, Christian, like, we know you don't do recreational drugs, but you know it's different. And something, this was 2014, was there, this moment where it was like, you know what? And I believe in God. I'm very spiritual. Like, it was something which told me, do it. And that's when I did the first mushroom trip, psychedelic trip, and it was hands down the most meaningful, best, important thing I've ever done. And then I came out of it, and it was like, holy shit, my entrepreneurial mind kicked in. I knew all the data, and I was like, if it's doing that amount of positivity add on to me as baseline, very happy, this must be somehow available. And that was sort of my journey of bringing back psychedelics into the the medical field. And to mention one other company, because we talked about enhanced, like the other one is really Atai. It's also listed. I think it's one of the biggest opportunities out there. We've produced some of the best data sets in the meantime over the last 10 years in neuroscience. Yeah, we're going to have a bunch, that's where I'm confident in, of approved drugs helping and significantly improving patients' life with mental health issues, from anxiety, depression, addiction to other drugs, which, by the way, we're going into a time, we said that before, like, world is complicated. And I think mental health is like, it's going to be, unfortunately, the fastest growing problem. It's already the number one now in healthcare. And we have the solution. Yeah. And I'm super proud of that as well.
Yeah.
So I was meaning to ask
absolutely.
when you first mentioned
Well, you
psychedelics.
went on stuff like now we went into deep stuff, but like you wanted to.
No, I like that. I really like the anecdote. The anecdote is really good. I think people like the anecdote. Like people, maybe someone clicks in and like they really want to hear about, whatever, the enhanced games, or they want to hear what is Christian's peptide. Oh, what is, the multi-millionaire, billionaire peptide stack, whatever. I think these are things that people will enjoy and they'll like hearing. But I think people like hearing like the human side and the anecdotes and the story. It makes you connect more with a person, understand like their motivation and, why they do what they do. And I think that's like a lot of what we try to do.
It's also really funny for people to hear, because there's always some group that is saying like, yeah, gay people are overrepresented among like creatives or like this group of successful professionals or like this, and to have someone say like, yep, it's because I, just no time for women. There's no time for women. Wasn't out there drinking, and now it looks like that compounds pretty well over time.
See, these are the simple life choices, and yes, like when I can say it again. Like I would have obviously a different life if I would have had a dating life in my teens. I did not. Like I focused on learning.
This is really funny because Lucas says this to me all the time. Like when I call Lucas and I'm like, oh, we have to record a little bit later because I was like, I was out with a girl. Lucas is like, a waste of your time, man. Total waste of your time. You could have made so much money. He's always like, Sayla, like, what if we were just gay, man? What if we just decided to be gay and stop wasting time on women?
It's almost worse because the gay culture is even more now. Like it's so approved and allowed and so normal that like and guys plus guys like is even a more volatile dating life. I think, like, by the way,
yeah.
Again, you just need to know what you want. But in the meantime, like, hey, find a cool girlfriend for you and like find the girl you want who's everything you want.
No, of course. And it's a joke, and we go back and forth. Lucas, later when we go off air, will say it's not a joke. Sayla, you can't talk to women. Our podcast is failing because you're talking to women.
Oh my god. Again, it's
but no. In all seriousness, I think all things in moderation. And I really believe, like, when it comes to wellness, I live my life to enjoy my life. And there's different philosophies. There's people who really want to live 100 years. Like, I think if I really enjoy 80 years, I'm really happy enjoying 80 years.
Yep.
And
by the way, that's so important. You said something super simple but very important. So I want to rephrase it because that's one of the saddest and most important sort of learnings I had about mental health. Because I came to mental health and building a tie from a very unusual aspect. A lot of people who are interested in mental health come because they want to help themselves. I came I didn't want to help myself. I was like super happy. And then I realized oh, there's psychedelics. And on the other side, I realized, wow, so many people are not happy. It was really bizarre for me because I said it before, I believe being happy is what we're here for. And you can't I think first you need to be happy yourself, because only when you're happy yourself, you can make others happy. And that's the formula for life for me. Be happy and make others happy. But the number one thing I realized why people are not happy is because they don't even know what makes them happy. And it's so sad. And
so many people go through the motions, right? They don't ever really think why am I doing this?
And they do. And the truth is they're doing it because somebody told them either in their childhood. It's often back. But and again, always coming back to my parents, big shout out to my love, because they always gave me the feeling I can do whatever I want. The fun anecdote is because I became so good and I was learning all day, and I told my parents fairly late that I'm gay, only in my 20s, because I didn't want to worry them. It was not that I was worried they couldn't accept me. It was more like I didn't want to burden them with that. I wanted to make them happy, not sad. So they were looking at me when I was 15, 16. I remember every weekend my father took me aside and was like, boy, don't you want to party a bit more? Don't you want to have a girlfriend? But don't you want to go out? I don't want to drink alcohol. I said, no, I need to learn. So my parents were always like, wow, like, you need to loosen up. Like, anyway, so, but like, it always gave me the feeling, whatever you do at the end, it's good. Because like, so I was and I am very loved. Like, and I think that's what people need. But like, a lot of people have the opposite. They got indirectly, directly told what they should do, should not do, society, whatever. And they're not even aware of that prison they're sitting in. And again, the saddest, I think, is the people who don't really know what makes them happy, because sometimes it's the easy stuff. And then all of the people who kind of know what makes them happy or would make them happy, but they are afraid of living according to it. And it's so, and by the way, again, like one psychedelic anecdote, I was minding in a country where it's legal. That's a disclaimer, because hopefully it's soon legal in the US, but it's not yet. Again, psychedelics, medical with a doctor. And I really believe in that, by the way, because psychedelics are very, very powerful therapeutics who, like, since humanity's dawn, are actually used with guides together, therapists. In the past, we called them shamans, and now we call them doctors, physicians, whatever. So, but I was supporting somebody in a country where it's legal during a therapy session, and it's one of the richest, very rich person in the world. And he was lying there, and he was only realizing for 4 hours how much he loves his children, how much he loves his wife, and actually that he has so much money that he can never spend it. And he wants to quit his job and his business and sell it and spend time with family, because that makes him happy. And he realized that he didn't do it because he was ashamed. Like, what could his competitors say? Could he look weak? Like, all these bullshit. Yeah. And the psychedelic trip showed him, if you go on that path, but psychedelics are very gentle. They only show you, they never force you. And they showed him, look, if you go further that path, you're going to have more billions, but you're not going to be happy. Or you stop.
I'm really curious.
And that person sold the company and is now one of the happiest people, because that's what makes him happy. Sorry, where is like?
Yeah. I'm really curious. You mentioned, like, since the earliest stages of humanity, do you believe in this, like, burning bush theory?
100%.
I have the stoned ape.
Well, these are two different things. Like, so there's the stoned ape theory. And by the way, literally.
Do you mind introducing these? Because maybe the audience.
So again, let me define first psychedelics and quickly just give a spiritual and a medical description. So on the medical side, if I want to make it very simple, we all, and it's just because then you understand what both the burning bush and the stoned ape theory better. So psychedelics is a group of drugs, but with a very similar mechanism to describe it, like in a very simplified, sort of non-scientific way, but like we all have a part in our brain which we would call the ego, not in a colloquial way. Somebody has a big ego, like really where our sense of self is created. It's called the default mode network, and that is super important because when we wake up, we need to go. Like we want to have a sense of self. We want to have a healthy ambition, competition. Like that's the part which is like, oh, this person is more successful. Like I want to be like that. Like, and it's all healthy in moderation. But when this ego part takes over, it can also be the source of many problems in life. Very simplified. So in under psychedelics, what we see, by the way, that's why it's one of the reasons why we could do what we do is because now in the 60s, they saw that psychedelics have very powerful effects, but they couldn't see what's going in the brain because the technology was not there. Now we actually can explain the mechanism of action, can show what happens in the brain. And that part of the brain, the default mode network, is reduced. And your instinctive question of a lot of people is, who am I if my ego is not there? That's the fear. And the beautiful answer is there is so much more. And now passing over in the spiritual realm is like, or maybe like, I don't need to give a spiritual, but like I would call it, you have a soul, which is connected to God, but maybe it's just a subconsciousness. It doesn't matter. But there is something in your mind which is there, I would say, all the time. But our ego is so loud, and for some people it's louder, and it's so pounding that you're not allowed actually, or you're not allowing yourself access to this much wiser source inside of you. Yeah. And in the moment your ego is reduced, people are ruminating over the simplest facts. And again, I'm anticipating a question which often comes is like, oh, what did you learn on psychedelics? And my answer is always like the simplest facts. And if I tell you that now, you're going to say, Christian, this is so banal. We knew that already, but you don't know it because you know it, but your ego is kind of holding back you from the real realization that the simplest sources of happiness is, again, it's like spend time with friends and family, love people, like all these cheesy stuff. You can read a Deepak Chopra book, you can read all these stuff, you can read the religious books of all religions. They tell you that be a good person, treat others like you want to be treated yourself. Yeah. But our ego is kind of avoiding to really, really, really understand that. And on psychedelics, people have, because their ego is reduced, some of these very, like, again, very simple realizations, but they have it on a level, I had it on a level where you come out and like, yes, I want to change my life because I know now more about myself, more about life, whatever. So this is how psychedelics work. So based on that and on a lot of research, there are various, what we know is that throughout recorded history, so we can trace it back like 8,000 years, almost all religions and societies have used psychedelics. By the way, interestingly, in the same way I want them to be used. And it's very important, the 70s, which a lot of people remember as the age of psychedelics, they were wrong. The reason why we hear or why we had no psychedelics for some decades is unfortunately because they went wild and they didn't actually give it the respect psychedelics deserve. So, but like the rest of the last 8,000 years, what we know, they always had the same rules. You have to do it with a therapist together, physician or a shaman. Yeah, you have to only do it once or twice a year. They no escape. They tell you how to live a good life, but you then go out and you live that life. You're not escaping every weekend and do it. Yeah, and all of that, all religions came to the same conclusion. And what is also proven by great research, I'm supporting a bit, is that most religions are based actually on psychedelic consumption. So there is very good evidence that the early Christians used a lot of psychedelics. There's the Elizabethan mysteries. There are several cults in Egypt. So throughout history, the sad part is that all the religions who unfortunately became an organization and hence are still there, when you're building an organization, you don't want your disciples to take psychedelics because like the core lesson also from psychedelics is that, by the way, that is some of the now called cults and heretic cults in early Christianity, which got outlawed. I think they were the true Christianity, is like we all have a soul, and that's what I believe, and we all have a connection to God. And I think if you're honest to yourself, like, and if you are in sync with your soul, like if you hear your soul, you know what's right and wrong. Like, is all the discussion good? And even like, you know, all of that. Yeah. So you don't need to be told, but like all organized religion went through the same, unfortunately, cleansing, where some people then said, wait a moment, if all of our disciples have a direct line to God, they don't need us. Yeah. And then, for example, Christianity went through that, where the more spiritual, the more psychedelic streams of Christianity were outlawed, and then rules were put in place. So the priests and the bishops and the popes, whatever, they are your way. Yeah, and it's always sad. Too much, we come back to that very simple, like towards libertarian, like too much state, too much control. It's never good. And the same with religion. Anyway, but like, so coming to your theories, like the very long, what is the hardest to prove is the stone ape theory, but there are very credible evolutionary biologists and anthropologists who at least raised the idea that maybe the consumption of psychedelic substances in the very early days of humanity helped us
unlock something, right? That like it was a step function.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the more near term, the burning bush theory is like, if you go into ancient Egypt, they had it's a pity that I can't show it because I have actually a depiction of the cult of Osiris, which is like, I don't want to say it wrongly, it's like 5,000 years old. Like, I collect ancient artifacts and antiquities which show the connection people always had to psychedelics. So there was the cult of Osiris, and one term in ancient Egypt for using ayahuasca, what is now called ayahuasca. Like they had a brew, which is what ayahuasca is a South American term, but like at the end it contains DMT. It's actually a plant, a tree which contains DMT, and you need to mix it with another one, which makes you able to digest it. And ancient Egypt had that. So there was the psychedelic tradition in ancient Egypt, and one of the phrases people use to say that you do DMT, drink DMT to talk to God, to Osiris in this case, was talking to the burning bush. It's a long story. They believed like in these special bush which contains DMT, the blood of Osiris was flowing. And then go now in the Bible, which by the way I think is much more honest and real. That's a good thing. Like we're like than we think. When Moses, who was socialized in ancient Egypt, went out with his people and was in the desert and didn't know what to do, he did what he was taught to do. How you speak to God, you use the phrase you speak to the burning bush, is you consume DMT, you drink it. So I don't even think he wanted to hide it. He was telling, and everybody I think knew in the ancient world that Moses was doing DMT. We just forgot that meaning, and now we talk about the burning bushes and whatever picture. No, it's not a picture. It was a term. Like it's a little bit like maybe in 1,000 years, at the moment we say for having sex, we say we sleep with each other. Maybe in 1,000 years, people are like, what the fuck? Why did these people sleep next to each other and made such a deal out of it? No, they just lost the understanding. And now research shows like there was an idiom, I think you call it in English, like a phrase which was talking to the burning bush, which meant consuming DMT. And suddenly, by the way, that makes not just more sense, it gives the Bible, in my point of view, much more credibility, because I do think you can, it's my personal spiritual view, science ends here what I'm saying now, but I do think that psychedelics allow you to listen to your own soul, and by that to communicate with the divine. That's what Moses did, and he got shown where to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my view on a lot of this stuff is like we should probably let people, I believe in bodily autonomy. I think if you want to do something, even if other people think it's weird or it offends their sensibilities, you want to whatever, do some weird piercing, do some crazy tattoo, do some weird drug. I think you should be allowed to do it. I think a lot of times
weird drug, I would say, like informed consent. I always come back to that, but yeah, so like
always informed consent, right? Informed consent, etc.
I think you should care much less what other people think about you. I think that's the biggest source of unhappiness, is consuming yourself with what other people think.
Because by the way, care a lot about what other people think because they don't actually know what they think.
Exactly. And by the way, they think.
I think that's the biggest thing. Like, I don't know if I agree with this. Like, I think you should care what other people think, but the problem is there's so many people that only seem to care what other people think because they don't actually have their own conviction. Like, it's like, oh, should I drop out of college or start this company or date this girl or date that other girl or whatever? And it's like, I think you should care what other people think. It's a data point, right? It's useful. Like when you were growing up, you knew, if I come out now, maybe, people won't take it the right way, whatever. It was a data point. Should you lie to yourself? No, of course not. But it's a data point and it's relevant. But you should know like what your opinion is at the very least, right? Yeah. And then if you decide, I'm gonna do what other people want, great. But like you thought about the trade-offs. I think that's what I advocate for a lot. Like do whatever you want, but really think about the trade-offs and what trade-off you're getting and like why you're doing this. And if you're doing it because other people, I just want to, other people want me to do this. Okay, great. But at least be conscious that you're doing that, because then you're self-aware of like your ego. And I think one of the worst things that can happen is like you wake up one day, you're 30, 40, 50 years old, and you're like, why the fuck did I do any of the things I did over the last 20, 30 years?
This is what I wanted to ask about. You were talking about how a lot of people need to just figure out what they actually want to do in life, and that a lot of your unlocks came from just saying, I am going to do what I actually want to do. I don't really know what the average person is supposed to do to go and figure out what they like. I assume you would suggest maybe some form of psychedelic experimentation or something like that, but is there anything outside of that people could maybe do to figure out like what type of a person they are, right?
Well, so start with the quickest is psychedelics. I would say there was this, like, I had a little bit of an online debate with Mark Andreessen. I don't know if you saw that he got very anti-psychedelics wrongly, I think, because he was like posting things like, oh, I've seen too many founders who did psychedelics and then they quit it, or like
this is like the business, like the capital allocator who's like, all these founders did it, and now my return on capital, the LPs.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why he might have, it's watching neutrally. But what my reply was like, hey, I hear you, and it's sad if people realize while they're in a certain journey, because then they have a responsibility, whatever. Yeah. So, but his take was like, we shouldn't allow psychedelics for founders. My take was like, maybe you should ask every founder before they start the company to do psychedelics, because that you really know what they want. Because by the way, his take was also wrong in one thing. Because like that is a worry a lot of people. By the way, that was my worry. Like I was very proud always about my ambition and everything. So when I went into my first psychedelic trip, I was like, shit, what is if I come out and want to be a farmer in Argentina? Yeah, this is all these things like what Mark, and this is exactly what Mark Andreessen was like pushing that stereotype.
Yeah, what he's talking about is like you suddenly realize you don't care about work at all.
But
you, Christian, you're different. You went and you realized what you most want is to return capital to LPs. That's your deepest desire.
Almost, yeah, because like no, but these people, I want to make their point is like they use the word, oh, people change with psychedelics, and I heavily disagree. Yeah, psychedelics do not change people; they show people who they really are. So if you go in and you were true to yourself, in my case, by the way, psychedelics were just adding. They were like, my message was one of my first trips was like, Christian, you do exactly what you love to do, just do more of it, like, and concentrating. And that, by the way, and then it's so amazing because psychedelics are teachers, and I think God as a teacher, adjust here, adjust there. But like my message was like, God, like you're fully on the right track. Yeah. Because I think I was always true to myself and was very like, so, but yes, if people living a lie, and don't you maybe know what I said before, they live a lie, it could look to other people as if they changed, but the truth is they found themselves. And I would never, that was my point. I do not want to make money by abusing people who don't know who they are. Like, I want my founders to love what they're investing in. I want them to love what they do. And that's why they're great. Like, so I actually tell often people before I invest, maybe do a psychedelic, or before you start a company, really know what you want. A founder journey is not easy. Yeah, really know that's what you're up for. And I think that will be the healthier, the better takeaway.
Before you get into a marriage too, before you marry a woman, you have to make sure to do your psychedelic experience. You come out and you're like, yeah, it looks like sorry, I have to go. We're calling up to go.
I think it's definitely a good thing to ruminate about a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, it was a pleasure to have you. I want to be mindful of time. You've been with us a bunch. I'm sure we'll speak more when we go to the Enhanced Games. It'll be fun. I'm really looking forward.
In person. Thanks everybody for joining in. Yeah, it was really fun. We should do that more often. But I think we covered a lot of the topic.
I think we covered a lot of stuff. I always like to, you want to leave people wanting a little bit more than give them too much. We'll chat more off air or in Vegas very soon. Maybe we'll have you back on at some point. We'll see. I think people really enjoy it. I mean, we've been chatting about the peptides, and I think this stuff is very interesting to a lot of people. And so hearing it from someone who's been thinking about this deeply and is like is operating a company that's, trying to be reputable but also push the boundaries, and a little bit of that mix is interesting. But yeah, it was a pleasure to have you. Super, super glad.
Thanks for having me. And see you in Las Vegas.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will see you in Vegas. Yes. If you don't come, you're a loser. Everybody who's listening to this.
Don't let you know that. You never lose in life. You always
if you don't tune in, you maybe.
Exactly.
Right?
Then it's like, then you're even not a loser. You just miss an amazing event. I think it's going to be one of the best.
That's as close as Christian will get to calling you a loser. That's just he's too positive. Too positive.
No,
he's too nice of a guy.
Look, we can't talk about psychedelics and about all we did and then call people a loser.
All right, guys, I think we're going to call it there. Big thanks to Christian for coming on. Super interesting guest. His company should be publicly tradable now, actually. So ticker ENHA, not financial advice, but if you did like the pitch, it is there for you. Big thank you to our sponsors, Polymarket, Zcash, CitizenX, and Passage Press. And a big thank you to you, our beloved viewers. Love you all, guys. Good night and Godspeed.